the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
There you are. Good evening. Have I got a show for you? Have I got a show for you? Yeah, I have. I definitely have. Good evening and welcome to the Political Asylum right here on Talk. I am your genial host, Kevin O'Sullivan, and I'll be in the hot seat for 3 thrilling hours of news, views and dazzling debate. You know the drill. Get involved, get on the phone and get on the show by calling me on 0344 499 1000, or you can WhatsApp voice note me on the same number and I guarantee I will play your message out. You have my word. It's Tuesday, March the 4th. Here's what's coming up. As Tin Pot General Keir Starmer struts around pretending he's the bridge between Trump and Europe, he insists that America's continued backing of Ukraine is essential. But while Two-Tier convenes his so-called coalition of the willing EU leaders who, when push comes to shove, will turn into a coalition of the unwilling, trust me, Donald Trump announces that he is suspending all military aid to Ukraine. Nice work, Keir. Well done. What is it about the president's drive for peace that the Euro crowd finds so appalling? Vice President J.D. Vance's declaration that the UK hasn't fought a war for 30 years may well be dubious and insulting, but it is a window into what America's leaders really think about the British Prime Minister. That he is just another weak, woke lefty from the other side of the pond. Are they right? 0344 499 1000. And while Starmer, Macron and that gormless gang of dysfunctional incompetents tell us that continued war is for our own good, I can't help remembering that these were the same self-important losers who insisted that cripplingly long lockdowns were the only way to beat COVID. Are we going to get fooled again? 0344 499 1000. Meanwhile, back in Looney Land, those wacky immigration judges are at it again. Our thanks to the laughable, learned Anna Rose Landers for her ridiculous ruling that an Iraqi drug dealer jailed for 5 years cannot be deported because he's too westernized. He's been here 24 years. So apparently that means he'll face persecution in his home country. Really? It's the European Convention on Human Rights, innit? This is a crook who came here illegally and was refused leave to remain, but carried on appealing until, hey presto, 9 years later, was allowed to stay indefinitely. Just how screwed up is our migrant system? 0344 499 1000. In other news, Speaker Sir Lindsay Hoyle is under fire for billing taxpayers a staggering £250,000 for 2 years' worth of first class and business class flights and luxury hotels, a private jet in the Caribbean, thousands of pounds on chauffeur-driven limousines in Los Angeles and Australia. Long-haul Hoyle's expensive jet setting is costing the public a fortune. When this show first revealed this extravagance back in December, Mr. Speaker's office insisted his global odysseys were neither jollies nor jaunts. Okay then, so what exactly are they? And if he stopped shelling out so much of our money, seeing the world, would it make a blind bit of difference? 0344 499 1000. Also tonight, similarly, Labour's massive private jet and helicopter hypocrisy is exposed. After criticising the Tory government for its planet-destroying air travel, Keir's crew spaffed more than £2 million on private jets in their first 3 months. That's 160 grand a week. Isn't that special? 0344 499 1000. Also tonight, a warm welcome to our special guest critic as he reviews the Duchess of Sussex's new Netflix cooking series with Love Meghan. Thomas Markle Jr. delivers his verdict on his sister's eagerly awaited show in an hour. Spoiler alert, he's not impressed. Plus, after the BBC chairman described the state broadcaster's shockingly biased slice of blatant pro-Palestine propaganda, Gaza, how to survive a war zone as, and I quote, this is a stunning quote, a dagger to the heart of the BBC's claim of trustworthiness and impartiality. What next in this tawdry saga? Will any heads roll? Or even deputy heads? If not, why not? 0344 499 1000. And I'll find out what's happening in Runcorn and Helsby, the former Labour constituency, still represented in Parliament by thug MP Mike Amesbury, convicted of beating the hell out of a constituent on a drunken night out. Is he really going to try and hang on as an independent, and can reform overturn Labour's thumping 14,000 majority? They fancy their chances. 0344 499 1000. All that and so much more, so don't go anywhere. Stick with me right here, right now on Talk, the home of free speech and common sense. Let's spend Tuesday night together, and he's just snuck into the studio. It's the great Tim Montgomery. Welcome, Tim.
Well, you're lucky I'm here, actually, Kevin, because after certain events at Old Trafford over the weekend, I was wondering...
Let's talk about it.
I was worrying what the conversation might be this evening,
yes,
but perhaps...
I got a plaintive little WhatsApp voice note from this man here, a Man United fan, saying, oh, come on, United, after they equalised against Fulham. But that story wasn't to last very long, was it? Anyway, commiserations. I really do feel sorry for you. Couldn't care less.
Hello, Kevin.
Hi, Tim. Welcome. Have you seen Meghan's cooking show yet?
I haven't, no. I've been so full of Zelensky and Trump and Vance and all that. But that's a treat. Yeah. It's not exactly been edifying, but if Meghan has come up with another one of her great television triumphs, I shall enjoy watching it being picked apart by the critics.
I started the day having to watch it. I watched about...
was it as bad as everyone seems to think it was?
Oh my God. I mean, boring doesn't even begin to cover it. And I'm not saying that lightly. It was strikingly, stunningly dull. Yeah. But as I just said, in an hour's time, we'll get the verdict of her brother, Thomas Markle Jr., who sort of shares my reservations.
I did see a clip, and I don't know whether it was from the series, but of Harry sort of burying his head in his hands at one point.
Makes an appearance right towards the end of the series. In episode 2, we first hear his voice. Yeah. But to be fair, he's not trying to steal the limelight from his wife in this one. Perhaps...
Probably wants to get away from the car crash.
Yeah, exactly. Arguably, this is slightly more important. Let's talk about, the events that have superseded that extraordinary bust-up in the White House on Friday. Yeah. I mean, the saga continues apace. Now, it looks as if, there's so many aspects to discuss. First of all, let's discuss what looks like the latest developments, and that is that Zelensky in the past couple of hours has basically said, oh, I regret what happened, I'm sorry about that, I'm reaching out to the White House, I still want to do this mineral deal. Now, I think it's arguable that both sides could deliver an apology if they wanted. That meeting didn't go well, but Zelensky can't afford to fall out with the White House, and we're seeing those results now. He's buckling. He's basically saying, what do you need, Donald? What do you want? I'm here to give it to you. Yeah.
I can't remember the exact quote, Kevin, but during the Second World War, when Churchill and Britain really needed American help, Churchill said something, I've studied how to woo Roosevelt more than I've studied any woman I most wanted to sort of, hook up with. He didn't use those terms, but that was basically what he was, He studied Roosevelt because it so mattered to Britain in the Second World War that we had America's economic and eventually support. Yeah. And so Zelensky, there's fault on both sides for what happened on Friday. Yeah. But Zelensky really messed up that meeting. He really needed America to sign that mineral deal. And, he provoked. Yeah. And particularly if you watch the whole of the broadcast, not just the bit that's been, most on TV and radio. Yes. Actually, he was provoking Donald Trump all the way through, actually, in various ways. And eventually it was J.D. Vance that snapped. But this statement today it has a lot of... I don't know what you felt about it. I felt like the British Foreign Office might have been slightly involved in this as well. It was very well written. And, you know, it didn't
In that case, the British Foreign Office can't have been involved.
You cynic.
You can rule them out.
It didn't quite apologise, but it definitely used that word regrettable. And I think that's the nearest you'll get Zelensky for his sake of his own national pride to admit it. But I would be very surprised if this statement wasn't already agreed with the White House. Basically, if it wasn't our Foreign Office directly involved, someone would have said to the White House, this is what we're thinking of issuing, is this enough?
Yes.
And my prediction, firm prediction, I made this on a podcast I'm part of earlier today, is in 2 or 3 weeks' time, perhaps sooner, a deal will be signed between Ukraine and America on these minerals. And once you have American economic interests, as important as access to these minerals represent for America, once you have those American economic interests established in Ukraine, there will be an implicit security guarantee.
They'll have skin in the game.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they'll protect Ukraine, and Putin will know it. And so you have to remember that a lot of people seem to think that this mineral deal has just cropped up in the last month or so. It's actually Zelensky's been dangling it in front of America for a long time now. Yeah. He's always wanted this. And I think you're right. I think he's going to get it, and Trump's going to get what he wanted. And I think we've wasted a lot of time worrying about the manners that's shown by Trump and Vance, and whether or not they bully. I said this at the weekend on the tweet. You can't bully a man like Zelensky. Zelensky is a grown-up who has led his country through a hellish war for 3 years. Let's not patronise him by saying he was bullied. Just because he's smaller physically than those two guys in the Oval Office, he was not bullied. He is not he's not a victim. Let's get that straight. Now, they behaved in a way that Europeans found unpalatable, but I think we're going to have to get used to this. And developments today reveal that maybe it was staged, maybe it went over the top, but Trump is getting exactly what he wanted, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I slightly, I don't know about you in the morning now, Kevin, I slightly hesitate to turn on the radio to find out what's gone on overnight.
The United results,
particularly with the rain. I'm not just talking about the football. But State of the Union. It's the big set-piece speech by the President every year to the American Joint Houses of Congress. That'll be tonight. I'm hoping I'm very well going to get bad stuff from Trump on tariffs. I don't understand what he's doing against Canada. That's another subject. But on Ukraine, hopefully he can really welcome this statement, and we can begin to get past the extraordinary kerfuffle of recent times. I don't know how you felt about it and how listeners feel about it, but it's kind of exhausting, isn't it? The swings, we're not able even to talk about anything else. It's all this Ukraine, Trump, Zelensky. It's just absolutely dominant.
It is, and as extraordinary scenes in the Oval Office on Friday, and I think it's an exaggeration to call it all according to a plan. I don't think that Trump and Vance wanted it to explode that much, but as they say in reality TV, it is what it is. And we've now, this is just breaking, 3 sources have confirmed to Reuters that this mineral deal will definitely be signed, and that means that all the fears about America completely pulling out are now null and void.
That's huge.
America is still involved and will continue to be involved. But earlier today, J.D. Vance, by the way, the one thing I'd say about J.D. Vance, I like Vance. I think he's a very clever man, and he's the first...
He follows me on Twitter, so I think he's a man of great wisdom.
He's a man of discernment. But seriously, he is the first American vice president that anyone ever noticed.
Yeah.
So, and I think if Trump goes on like this, maintaining this level of popularity, we're looking at the next president there, so let's not be too disparaging about Mr. Vance.
He does need to calm down a bit, though. I don't know if we're going to come on to his remarks about
what
British
we're going to say.
French
That's
troops.
exactly what we're going to see now. He gave an interview to Fox News earlier today, and this has annoyed a lot of people in this country. See if you can work out why.
If you want real security guarantees, if you want to actually ensure that Vladimir Putin does not invade Ukraine again, the very best security guarantee is to give Americans economic upside in the future of Ukraine. That is a way better security guarantee than 20,000 troops from some random country that hasn't fought a war in 30 or 40 years.
How dare he? How dare he? Of course, a lot of people are saying that's a reference to Great Britain. I mean, that's a sort of dubious. It depends how you define a war. I mean, we were in Iraq, of course, side by side with our American allies, and you know, we were peacekeeping, which is a bit of a misnomer. We were fighting like terriers in Afghanistan, keeping the peace for many years. So to say that we are not experiencing combat is a bit much, but Vance has subsequently said, "Oh, I didn't necessarily mean Britain," and that's because I think he realises he slightly overspoke there. But what I
overspoke, that's a lovely expression.
Yes, misspoke, overspoke. I just invented something. I rather like that. Misspoke, shall we say? But what I do think about that little statement from Vance is it does actually reveal what the American leaders, Trump and Vance, really think about Starmer. Now, Starmer strutting around on the bridge between Trump and Europe and America must stay. Well, while he's saying America must stay involved, almost 5 minutes later, Trump announces, "I'm pulling all military aid from Ukraine." So I believe that Trump and Vance think that Keir Starmer is the same as all the rest of the European leaders: woke, weak, dysfunctional, ineffective, not very competent either. So this idea, the way he's positioned himself as this sort of colossus bestriding the world stage, it's just ridiculous. They're not listening to him. They've got what they caused on Friday, right?
I'm going to push back against you a bit on this one, I'm afraid, Kevin. No, Keir Starmer isn't a colossus. I agree with you on that. You get no quarrel from me on that. That would be
You'll accept that.
Yeah, that would be an over. What's an overspeak?
Don't overspeak.
An overspeak on my part. Yeah. But no, I think Keir Starmer's played it like an adult. Actually, I really do. Look, I'm not his political colour at all, and if he thinks any amount of international sure-footedness will rescue him from his massive domestic failure, he's wrong. But there's too many people, too many European leaders who rush to Twitter, rush to condemn Trump, rush to condemn Vance. And actually, what I think Keir Starmer's been trying to do is saying, let's hold this, let's keep steady heads, and let's sign this deal with Ukraine. And he's, and he almost got there. The White House, I watched the whole conversation in the Oval Office, and if it hadn't been for that flare-up towards the end of their time, I think the deal would have been signed last week. Yeah, exactly. And in that context, Keir Starmer's preparatory meeting the previous day might have looked a lot wiser than it does just at the moment.
Here's JD Vance talking about the Europeans and indeed Britain.
I think our European friends, frankly, are being really, they're doing a disservice to the Ukrainians because their own populations are saying, we're not going to fund this war indefinitely. The American people are saying, we don't want to fund the war indefinitely. So the only thing that is in the best interest of America, of Russia, of Ukraine, and of Europe is to bring this thing to a close. What happened, Sean, is you have Zelensky. He goes to Europe, and a lot of our European friends puff him up. They say, you're a freedom fighter. You need to keep fighting forever. Well, fighting forever with what? With whose money, with whose ammunition, and with whose lives? The president is actually taking a much more realistic perspective and saying, this can't go on forever. We can't fund this thing forever. The Ukrainians can't fight forever. So let's bring this thing to a peaceful settlement.
And, whatever you think about this, and I must say, I'm on Trump and Vance's side. Let's bring this to an end if we can. But whatever you think, that there is momentum here. This is going to happen. You can feel it. So we might as well get real. There is no point in the Macron sort of Schultz line, oh, this war must go on forever. We must carry on supporting Ukraine. Some people may feel that's the right thing to do, but it isn't going to last because, as Starmer has implicitly made it clear, if you haven't got American backing, this cannot carry on. And if we don't go along with Trump's plans for peace, his drive for peace, America will pull out and we won't be able to sustain that war. So our best bet is to go along with the Americans, right?
100%. I don't know if you've ever read Anthony Beevor's Stalingrad.
Yes, I have, yeah.
One of the most extraordinary books on the Second World War. I was rereading it recently for various reasons, and I could only read a few pages at a time because the horror of warfare. And people can criticise Donald Trump for lots of reasons, and I'm prepared to join in some of those criticisms. But one thing I think he genuinely has a feeling for is he's anti-war.
He hates war.
He hates war. And, the death toll numbers are contested. But, some say that 140,000, 160,000 Russian young people have died in this war. Similar numbers in Ukraine. So many more people injured. We are, on our own continent, seeing a war of horrific proportions. And for no real reason, no real gain. It's now in a quagmire, First World War trench situation. And I'm afraid if Kamala Harris had been elected US president, I think there would have been a pressure on her as the first woman president to show that she was macho and all the rest. We would have potentially been in a forever war situation. And Donald Trump, however clumsily some people might think he's tried to end this war, he is trying to end this war. And if that stops another 160,000 young Europeans dying, good. Because it needs to. Now,
you're guilty of under-exaggeration there. I'm inventing all sorts of new phrases.
What have I under-exaggerated?
It's near enough a million. Near enough a million young men have died.
Has died, not just injured.
And near enough a million young men have died in horrific. We don't know exactly, but it's considerably more than you suggested.
More than 350,000.
And if we carry on like this, I mean, there has been a kind of way of thinking in Europe, and as you say, on the part of Biden and Harris and our sort of left-leaning politicians, that somehow or other this was sort of totemic and we have to carry on, we must support Ukraine. Well, Donald Trump's driven a truck through that. He is going to drive for peace, and I think all of Europe and Zelensky now accept they've got to go along with it. And I cannot, in my heart of hearts, think that is a bad thing.
No. And Russia, you may be right about the death toll numbers. Kevin.
Send my producer telling me.
Okay,
if it's injured too. If it's wrong, it's her fault.
Yeah, I thought that was deaths and injuries, but I may be wrong. It's far too many. We can agree, it's far too many. But I've lost my thought now. But
and also don't forget, this is the meat grinder, isn't it? These are horrific.
They're horrific numbers. Yeah, but I've got my point again now. The point was, Russia hasn't won this war. The idea that if there's any peace settlement out, Russia's won. It's lost 160,000 or 500,000, however many young men it is, far too many. They've been humbled, really, in the eyes of the world. They thought they would be in Kiev in a week. Yeah. They never got close to Kiev.
Yeah.
And so Russia will not have won this war, whatever happens from now on.
And when the peace is made, when there's a peace deal, I'm going to get up a petition to restore Zelensky's name to having one Y at the end of it. Where did the extra Y suddenly turn up? It's always bloody Sky News, isn't it? There's someone works at Sky News who spends all their time looking for alternative spellings to impose on an increasingly bemused audience. But suddenly 2 Ys. But on this show, he's got 1 Y.
We'll always start talking about Peking again as well.
Yeah, Peking and Bombay. Yeah. When they change the name of cities around the world, for ethnic reasons, it's like, why do you only do it to some cities?
Yeah.
It's a bit
I think we know the reason why.
Yeah, but weird stuff. Right, let's go to break. When we come back, there's been another one of these tribunal judges at work with a bizarre decision to let someone stay who shouldn't be allowed to stay. That next, stay tuned.
Starmer, you'll remember a year ago, was lecturing us about the then Prime Minister using private jets, etc., to get around the country, to get around the world. What is he doing now? Flying private jets everywhere. Right. And it's that hypocrisy that I think really goes against the grain for a lot of people. Today of all day, of course, being Pancake Day, no pun intended.
Yeah, absolutely right. And it's not just Keir Starmer, it's David Lammy as well. He spent over £1 million on private jets, well, and Starmer's up to about 800,000, I think.
We would hope that the European leaders gather all together and say, here is exactly how we can support you. We just hope that they will come together and say, well, here is 700 billion that Europe is going to spend on its security and defense over the next 10 years, for example. And this is what we are going to produce. This is where we can support Ukraine. This is where you are on your own. And it would be much more clear for us.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. I'm still with the great Tim Montgomery. Of course, I should have mentioned, he's a former sort of Conservative Party guru, founded Conservative Home, and what was it now? A couple of months ago?
3 months.
3 months ago, sensationally not defected, I don't like saying that, switched sides, went to Reform
I'm
UK.
defective or defector.
The defected sound like...
We're having fun with words tonight, aren't we?
Yeah, it sounds like you were treacherous or something. Listen, let's talk about another one of these tribunal judges. The tribunal judge follies.
I do sometimes wonder when I come in for these stories whether you've made them up, just to find out, tease me, is whether these are true. They're unbelievable,
you almost
aren't they?
feel like saying it, as Richard Littlejohn always says in the Daily Mail, you couldn't make this up. Well, we know about the stories we've already done, the various paedophiles who haven't been deported because of their right to a family life. That judge who
decided... like the chicken, who couldn't go to the chicken nuggets with the wrong chicken nuggets overseas.
Who couldn't be deported because he didn't like foreign chicken nuggets and so on and so forth. Well, here's another one. This is a judge called Anna Rose Landers, a laughable learned judge, and she's decided that an Iraqi drug dealer who did 5 years for dealing coke, that dangerous drug to our citizens, came out of jail, can't be deported. The Home Office said, well, 5 years, you broke our laws, you're a drug dealer, you have to go back to Iraq. Anna Rose Landis said, oh, no, that would violate his human rights. Because if he went back to Iraq, because he's been here for 24 years, he's become westernised and would therefore be viewed with suspicion and face persecution back in his home country. This was a guy who came here 24 years ago, illegally, spent 9 years fighting deportation, was finally allowed to stay indefinitely, and now this. Apparently he's very nice to his daughter, so that's another factor. But only last week another Polish drug dealer was allowed to stay in Britain because he can't speak Polish. I mean, I don't care if he can't speak Polish, and I don't really care that this guy's become so westernised that for some reason this judge thinks Iraqis will pounce on him and kill him or something. This is getting beyond a joke, isn't it?
It's going to be... Look, I run out of things to say about these topics, Kevin, when we talk about them. So I'm just going to say this one thing. We had a little bit of a minor disagreement a few minutes ago about how well Keir Starmer's doing on the international stage. But one thing I'll say, and I'm sure we'll agree on this, and everything I've known from politics makes me think this, no matter how internationally sure-footed our politicians are, if they preside over stuff like this, they will not be re-elected.
And by the way, 592 migrants came across the channel on Sunday. Yeah. So over the weekend, I think it was about 660.
It's getting worse. Is that getting worse?
So 592 is the record number for a single day this year, and that is, of course, because the weather is starting to get better. And
this is amazing at the moment.
Trust me, those figures coming across the channel
are going to
get very, very bad, and Keir Starmer won't be able to put them in the background anymore. Yes, you're exactly right. They've got to do something. What I think about our judges, these tribunal judges especially, but probably all judges, The people need the right to be able to judge the judges. As things stand, we have no recourse to our learned judges on the bench. We cannot sack them. We cannot punish them. We cannot even reprimand them. They are gods in their own zone, and something has to be done about that. And they have to be frightened for their jobs.
100%. Look, we all know who Keir Starmer is. He's a lawyer. And so now I think he's got to make a choice over the next few months and years while he's Prime Minister. He's got to decide whether he's going to uphold what the current legal establishment does and thinks, or is he going to use his legal knowledge to understand how to overturn this rule by unelected judges who are letting people that shouldn't stay in this country stay in this country? Is he going to use that legal expertise for the good of the country, or is he going to prop up the profession that he's been part of for too long, which are undermining all British sense of decency and fair play in these extradition decisions?
Absolutely, and these judges, as I say, we need some sort of recourse. Here's the problem, right? So a lot of people, and I agree with this, let's get rid of, or let's leave the European Convention on Human Rights because it will allow us to make our own decisions about what we do with people like this drug dealer here. We can't be overruled. So yes, let's leave them. But as long as we've got these kind of judges who are frankly left-wing Guardian readers who see themselves as fighting some kind of racist British regime, as long as we've got judges like this, they will find something to interpret in the migrants' favour and against the British nation. They'll keep doing this. So we can leave the ECHR, that would be a good start, but we also need to do something about these judges. They cannot continue to be a law unto themselves.
I suppose the only people they'd probably like to extradite are people like you and me, Kevin.
They'll have us out of the country in a flash. Right, let's go to break, and next up we're going to talk about Speaker Lindsay Hoyle, who, this isn't actually a new story. We did it in December, but somebody has really gone into the details. This guy is jetting round the world. He has spent £250,000 in 2 years on fact-finding missions. We'll go into the details afterwards, but something isn't right here, I'll tell you. So Sir Lindsay Hoyle, the Speaker, the jet-setting Speaker, next. Stay tuned for that.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is talk.
Here we go. Welcome back. I'm still with Tim Montgomery, and we need to talk about the Speaker, Sir Lindsay Hoyle, he is still a Labour MP technically.
The really humbled, sort of salt of the earth.
Yes,
Labour
and he
MP
gets a lot of plaudits from the body politic, from the Westminster mob, saying how studiously unbiased he is. I'm not buying entirely into that. He has had his problems. So I got in trouble with Sir Lindsay Hoyle's office the last time I did this, because I said he was notoriously favourable towards his Labour mates. They didn't like that at all.
The telling office done no good at all, because you're repeating.
Yeah, exactly right. Well, I was
quite right too.
I was also told off by them, telling me that I didn't understand the job of the Speaker. Well, I think I understand what the Speaker does. What I didn't understand about part of the integral part of his job was apparently that he jets around the world to the tune of £250,000 in 2 years. That's outrageous. That is outrageous. Yeah. Now, these are fact-finding missions. I remember when we did the story in December, he'd just been to the Cayman Islands and sort of spent £4,000 in some hotel and made a visit to the Cayman Parliament to take a look at how they're speaking.
How convenient.
I mean, what do we learn of any use there? So anyway, this guy, he always flies either first or business class. Even on short-haul flights to Dublin and Italy, he went first class. He stays in luxury hotels and costing up to £900 a night. In Los Angeles, not so long ago, he spent £3,000 on chauffeur-driven limousines. He spent £4,500 on chauffeur-driven limousines in Australia, and essentially is just knocking up this massive bill. He stayed in Montserrat. When he went to Montserrat in the Caribbean, he actually chartered a private jet. He stayed at hotels such as the St. Regis in Doha, the Westin Grand in the Cayman Islands, and the Ritz-Carlton in Los Angeles. As I say, his rooms cost up to £900 a night. No wonder he is picking up the nickname now Long Haul Hoyle. But I don't mind the idea of our Speaker going on the odd trip to check how other parliaments do it. I suppose that's part and parcel of diplomacy, soft power, if you like. But this is beyond the pale. This is, I think, wanton waste of taxpayers' money.
Yeah, well, and also, why does it seem to be Caribbean islands you seem to be visiting? Where are the trips to Slovakia or Belgium? Or some places where they don't have golden beaches. Yeah. I'm sure we could learn from the parliamentary democracies of places that don't have, round-the-clock sunshine as well. So, I've always liked him, but this is unacceptable. Really is unacceptable. And part of the problem, I think, Kev, is that Parliament is sovereign. So, Parliament in Britain, and it's quite right, decides the law of our country. It's why some of us voted for Brexit. But it does, of course, I think, mean that the Speaker isn't really accountable to anyone, apart from MPs. And if MPs don't sort of start looking at how he conducts himself, then who will? The trouble is, though, of course, they're all intimidated by him because they worry about if they start investigating, then they might not be called for questions and they'll be sidelined some way. So there is an accountability issue here. So thank God for the press. At least keeping the spotlight.
People like me, we're not so bothered. No. So sorry, Sir Lindsay, you are still in the spotlight. When we did this story in December,
because you were first with this story.
Yes, of course, breaking the news, political asylum. We were always first with the news. Yeah. The additions to the story, someone's done a freedom of information request to break down.
Yeah, but it was on the back of what you.
I mean, we did pick up on this, and in my report, I said, apparently, I know this because I have here the complaint from Sir Lindsay's office, 18th of December. Apparently, I said, the Speaker, and I quote, shows a definite prejudice towards his Labour mates. And I did go on, this is possibly unfair. I said, he's not a working MP or anything like that. And in fact, the Speaker does go on representing his constituency. So I'll accept that. I'll take that one on the chin. That wasn't fair. And my guess is that he's a good constituency MP. He's just got that feel about him, you know, a local guy kind of thing. But this complaint goes on to say his trips overseas are not, quotes, jollies or jaunts. It is entirely wrong and inappropriate to compare the Speaker's official business overseas to reports of alleged bad behaviour by past MPs on APPG-led trips. I didn't do that. I never did that. So she's taking something that I didn't actually say there. But I did describe them as jollies and jaunts, and frankly, I'm going to stick to that. I say these are jollies and jaunts, and if the Speaker, Sir Lindsay Hoyle, had any sense, he would have taken far fewer of these trips. Then he could have done a couple of years. Trust me, he's going to get grounded over this, isn't he?
Well, I used to work for Ian Duncan Smith when he was leader of the opposition, and that's a responsible job. And I remember, you know, we stayed in basic hotels when we were travelling around the country. You know, it was travel lodges, Premier Inns. The idea that we would spend £900 per room per night. You know, there'll be people listening to this programme whose whole holiday every year will cost less than £900. You know, it's an outrageous use of taxpayers' money when people who are paying these bills are already struggling to meet their, you know, basic cost of living.
Yeah, and I remember when we did this story, I can't remember the exact figures, but, you know, there were single nights in the hotel or dinner bills for something, you know, for £800 and things like this. Now, I accept he's probably got people to entertain and all that, but I would contend, no ifs, no buts, Sir Lindsay Hoyle is going on far too many of these trips, and they are costing far too much of taxpayers' money, and he should desist and decease. Am I right, Tim?
You are always right, Kev.
That's exactly right. So there you go, Mr. Speaker.
Except, of course, if we start to be invited to cover these trips with him. And then we'll accept the legitimacy.
So, Lindsay, you should get us inside the tent. We'll come with you to the Cayman Islands next time, and trust me, I'll file a glowing report.
We're open to be bought, aren't we?
Yeah, exactly right. Corruption is my middle name. But seriously, this is wrong. This is wrong, and he's got to wind his neck in about this. And I look forward to his office complaining to me again. But frankly, try it if you like. Right, next up, we're going to stick with the same kind of story, really. Do you remember, you will remember, that when Labour was in opposition, one of its favourite games was criticising the Tory government for the amount of money it spent on private jets.
Particularly Rishi Sunak. They really attacked him for it.
Yes, that's right, jet travel generally, luxury travel, all that sort of thing. Well, just as a pointer, did you know that in the first 3 months of Labour's tenure as the government, they spent £2,085,447 on private jets. More than £2 million on private jets. That works out to £160,427 a week on private jets.
Surely you've made a mistake, Kevin. Labour wouldn't do one thing and say one thing and do another.
Well, it seems extraordinary that, I mean, I can barely believe it, but it seems they may well be guilty of hypocrisy. David Lammy alone apparently racked up in travel expenses for the first 3 months 850 grand, nearly £1 million. Well, I mean, where does he go? What does he do?
Chagos Islands.
Yeah, that's right. It's just a Chagos
Selling out Britain,
Yeah, and of course he has extra luggage fees to pay because he takes lots of sets of training shoes to wear whenever he goes to Washington, that kind of thing. Anyway, we'll have a chat about that after these messages, so stay exactly where you are.
this is what President was trying to explain to Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. He was saying different ways, but how this time will be different from the previous times. And the previous times were in 2014, where we had ceasefire. It did not work for a day. Then in 2022, there were like first attempts of talking, and it didn't work well. So how do we make sure that Russia would not attack us again?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Now, as I said before the break, we're going to talk about, we just talked about Sir Lindsay Hoyle jet setting around the globe to, frankly, an overly extravagant extent. Now let's talk about Labour generally. Now, when, as Tim and I discussed just before the break, Labour were very fond of lashing into, especially Rishi Sunak, but all the Tories, for their overspending on private jets, flying around the world, helicopters. Well, they came into power, and as I said just now, they spent more than £2 million in the first 3 months of their tenure on private jet travel, £891,000 of which was spent specifically by the Foreign Secretary David Lammy. So, I mean, hypocrisy is the charge here, isn't it?
And I think we're probably not too bold in making this statement that Liz Truss is probably not the most popular politician in Britain. But
I'm warming to her, by the way. I'm warming to her.
Oh, are you? OK, well, we maybe come back to that another day. But the amount that David Lammy spends is nearly twice as much as she ever spent on flights. And I think part of it, Kev, is that...
I can give you the figures on that. Liz Truss, so David Lammy in 3 months spent $891,000, which is nearly half of what Liz spent during her entire tenure as Foreign Secretary from 21 to 22. So that was in an entire year.
It's an extraordinary amount of money. You think what you could do with £1 million as well. It's not a small amount of money.
And by the way, also Labour, a big early move by them was to cancel Rishi Sunak's outrageous £40 million helicopter bill. So what they now do, Labour, is they do it flight by flight. So the annual bill is going to be much more than £40 million. This lot are spending an absolute fortune on air travel.
Yeah, no, they really are. But you know what? Part of the problem, I think, with Labour is they're so convinced of their own moral superiority.
Yeah.
It's always the Labour way. They think the Tories are the nasty party and they're the good people.
Yes.
And if you really do believe you're the good party, and I know you and I will disagree with this, but if you really think you're the good party, anything is justified. And so, you're going around the world doing the people's business, and so, of course, it doesn't matter whether you spend a little bit on...
so it's OK for Ed Miliband, as is true, to rack up £23,000 on first-class air travel in the same 3 months, and saying, but it's important because I'm saving the planet. And this is the other aspect of this that is worth talking about. The investment bank Peer Hunt today, in an independent report, revealed that Crazy Ed's net zero madness is making families poorer and triggering a disastrous lack of productivity crisis. So there is that, but the net zero, him preaching to us, we've got to save the planet, and then we learn that his fellow cabinet ministers and him are racking up this absolute fortune in private jet travel, which destroys the planet like no other form of transport. I mean, you know, it's like so much of this, isn't it? You know, don't do as we do as we say. One rule for them and a different for the rest of it.
And it's just not joined up government either. One of the conversations that's going to happen in the not too distant future is if Keir Starmer is serious, and it's a big if Keir Starmer is serious about, you know, restoring Britain's defence capacity, that means we're going to have a defence industry, and that's going to mean some carbon, you know, use. It's going to mean some steel melting. It's going to mean some, you know, traditional manufacturing that has to be brought back to Britain, and good, I say.
Yeah.
But how does that fit with Ed Miliband's climate targets? At some point, Keir Starmer's going to have to choose. Is he going to rebuild Britain's defence industry, or is he going to keep being subservient to what Ed Miliband wants on climate?
Let me ask you this genuine question. I mean, there were signs last week that Keir Starmer collided with reality, and in the light of the fact that we needed to do something about our defence budget, we didn't do enough, but we did something. He took billions of pounds away from what I think is largely our fatuous foreign aid budget, but cut out the fatuous if you like. He took billions of pounds from the foreign aid budget and gave it to defence. Howls of protest from his left-wing MPs.
Not many howls, actually.
But, well, Annalise Dobbs quit in a fit of virtue signalling. But seriously, that was him colliding with reality. Do you think that down the line that he may have to get tough with Ed Miliband and say, sorry, we need growth, and your net zero zealotry does not align to that?
He really will have to. If he's serious about growth, if he's serious about restoring Britain's defence industry, he's going to have a tough conversation with Ed Miliband. And I think it might be one of the big moments in this Labour government. Either Keir Starmer does that, in which case, you know, we'll have some sense to the government of Britain, or he won't do it, and Ed Miliband will continue to be the most dangerous member of this government, because I really think what he's doing on the green agenda, costing families extra money in their, you know, monthly heating bill, is the most dangerous part of what this government's doing.
And are we as a people, as a population, as a nation, are we really going to put up with this guy causing us to have the highest energy prices in the damn world? Are we really going to put up with this for much longer?
I think the Labour government will be voted out at the next election. I certainly hope so. But the damage they can do, they've still got 4.5 years. The damage they can do in that time, and Ed Miliband, I think, is the most damaging member of the government, because he really has religion on climate change, and nothing will get in his way of getting rid of farmland in Britain and, you know, covering it with solar panels, and taking all sorts of risks with technology that isn't mature enough yet. So we're going to adopt in Britain all sorts of technologies that, by the time better technologies have been made, we'll be saddled with expensive energy for years to come, when other countries will take on better solar and wind technology. That'll mean that they'll have a lot cheaper energy that we'll do in the future, which will mean our manufacturing industry is even more disadvantaged in comparison.
Absolutely. I liked what he did with the foreign aid and the defence budget. I mean, he didn't go far enough, in my view.
I would have done it with the welfare bill. I would have cut the welfare bill.
But he's showing signs of a Prime Minister
who gets it,
who's beginning to get that there's a reality. He can't play student politics anymore, and I really think he may be edging towards realising he cannot tolerate Ed Miliband anymore, because Ed Miliband's going to cost us a fortune and will cost him his leadership if he carries on. And I reckon he might, if Starmer's got the gumption and the backbone to get rid of Ed Miliband, I'm going to revise my view of Mr. Starmer.
Well, listen, if we're still in here in a year, having one of these Tuesday chats, Kevin,
Starmer, useless.
Still, if Ed Miliband is still in his job in a year's time, I think too much damage will have been done, and so he needs to act soon.
It's frightening, isn't it? It really is frightening. I mean, it's just watching this. I mean, everybody knows that everything this guy says, it's not even scientifically accurate. We're allowing him to wreck our economy on the back of scientific speculation, basically. Very frightening, very frightening.
100% agree.
Bridget Phillipson, the enemy of free speech, I'll get rid of her too. How about that?
Yeah, I think if you and I had the choice, we'd get rid of most of them, though, wouldn't we? But
yeah.
Can we just start with Ed Miliband?
Yeah. No, so what we do agree is if Keir Starmer tomorrow announced that he was sacking his entire cabinet, we'd suddenly love him.
Well...
No, let's not go that far. Let's not go that far. Tim, fantastic to have you in for the whole hour today. We will see you again this time next week. That's the brilliant Tim Montgomery. He's my Tuesday pal. He's a Man United fan, but we're going to forgive him for that. Now, after the news, guess what? It's Thomas Markle reviewing his sister, Meghan Markle's programme With Love Meghan. So you won't want to miss this. It's really good. So stay tuned for that. Be back in a mo.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. This is the second hour of tonight's Political Asylum. Much still to come in this hour. But let's get cracking. Everybody is talking about the show of the day, obviously the TV show of the day. It is the release by Netflix of With Love Meghan, Meghan Markle's new cooking and gardening series. It's a 8-part series, 40 minutes an episode. I suffered a couple of them myself this morning. Anyway, we thought we would hire our own guest TV critic. Who better than to take a look at this series and deliver his verdict than Meghan's brother, Thomas Markle Jr. I sat down with him earlier today, and this is his review. Welcome, Tom. Thank you for standing in to be our special critic for the day. Now, we've both watched, I might say endured, With Love Meghan. It's finally hit Netflix today. I won't try and lead you down your avenue, but what are your first impressions? What did you think of the show?
Well, I think you hit it the nail on the head right off the bat by endured. But the opening scene, honestly, gosh, the opening scene with the bees. the first thing I thought was like, oh my God, Meghan's going to stick her face in a box of bees, and it's going to be called Botox with Meghan. I don't know. It was just
that's the next series, Tom. That's the next series.
Yeah.
But my feeling about it was, and I just thought, I didn't expect it to be interesting. I don't think I'm the kind of target market, but I just found it absolutely stunningly boring. What about you?
Yeah, the first 5 minutes, it was just so bland and generic, and it looked like so much effort was made, like put into it to make it look bland. It was just so like blah, like there was nothing sparkling about it. Nothing jumped out. It was just Meghan talking in that bland, generic voice about nothing.
Indeed. And now, you know, Meghan, when you were kids, when you were growing up together, did she make you all food all the time? She seems to portray herself as the kind of person who does that.
Yeah, I noticed when she said that, she grew up like watching cooking shows and grew up cooking all the time. And that wasn't the case. I mean, I do have to hand it to Doria. Doria is a great cook. I mean, by far a great cook. But Meghan, I don't think it, you know, the only thing that really made sense is when she started cooking bath salts there on the show and started talking about teabagging or something like that. I don't get it. She didn't cook anything for anybody ever growing up.
Yeah.
But when she started cooking bath salts on the show, then it all made sense.
I think perhaps it didn't. But I had this idea. What do you think about this, right? So that was the first episode. I've watched a couple of others as well. Later on in the series, I think it's episode 5, she kind of makes out that she was brought up in great poverty and never had a yard or a garden, as we call them in Britain. I'm not sure whether that's true or not. You can talk about that in a second. But here's what I thought. Instead of that really, really boring first episode about bees and about making pasta for her employee, the makeup man Daniel, how about she could have invited you, Samantha, and your dad round for lunch? Now, that would have got a massive audience, wouldn't it?
That would have been a showstopper right there. Although, you know, she probably would have turned us into wax dolls in the basement with all those candles and stuff. I don't know. It's just, but there was definitely better ways to go about that show. Don't get me wrong. There was a lot of effort put into that, the making of that. And I feel sorry for all the employees who had to endure it, but it takes a lot, but it just didn't work out. Nothing about that episode at all during the entire thing made me want to do it, made me ever want to watch it again. It was that boring. I'm sorry it was, but that's
I couldn't agree with you more. I used to be a TV critic, and I've watched a lot of TV in my time, and I've watched a lot of very dull shows. I mean, that one took the biscuit. I mean, it really, or the cookie, I should say. That one really, really was tedious. Towards the end of the first episode, as she and her employee Daniel are sitting down to eat some yogurt or something, they look across this fantastic view, and Daniel said, "I feel like this is all fake."
I feel like this is all fake.
It is not a backdrop. This is not a green screen.
Did you feel like it was all fake as well?
Yeah, I mean, I have to be honest. You know, I mean, I do a lot of things on social media. You know, I make a lot of jokes all the time. And, you know, actually, this is probably the first time I felt sorry and embarrassed for her, honestly. I mean, there should be like a disclaimer, you know, no cast or crew were hurt in the making of this series, you know? I don't know.
No cast or crew died of boredom during the making of this series. The audience, I'm not so sure. Yeah, that's an interesting take on it, Tom, that you felt she's so desperate. There's a desperation about her desire to be loved by everybody. Aren't I cutesy? Aren't I lovely? Look at the effort I make for all my friends. I put flowers in a pot. I love to prep the guest room and all that stuff. Desperate to be loved. and yet not quite cutting it, not quite making it. So in that respect, that's what makes you feel a little sympathy for her.
You know, to touch back on what you said a minute ago about she could have invited her father, first of all, me and Samantha, of course, and she could have turned that into something like the entire world was actually wanting to expect Meghan to do the right thing and pull her head out of her, you know what, and make amends. And at least with her father, you know, this would have been a great opportunity, a special guest on the season premiere. And she can sit there and make her dad one of those rainbow fruit hats or whatever the things. I mean, it looked like a clown's hat, but, you know, Dad would have enjoyed that.
Exactly right. It would have been, as you say, a blockbuster. That would have been the way to start the series. But to go back to this sort of fakery line, I mean, the whole thing exudes a kind of fakery. And there she is trying to pretend that she's this wonderful mom, this wonderful family woman who's so lovely to all of her friends. And in the backdrop, you especially know, but we all know, she's not very wonderful to her own family. She's not very wonderful to her father, to you, to her sister Samantha. And that's why she comes across like this massive, great fraud, like an actress delivering a part. Yeah,
you hit the nail on the head on that one, definitely, because the entire world knows how she treated her family, and especially how she treated her father, who gave her everything in life, which goes back to what you said earlier about growing up poor and underprivileged was the complete opposite. I mean, that's just another one of the malarkey stories she sold to the royal family for sympathy.
Even with me growing up, it was so much fast food. And yes, I get when you're on a budget, it's super affordable, but it costs you so much in the long run.
But when you have a garden, of course, having a garden is like printing your own money.
I love that.
And it never happened. You know, we weren't poor. She didn't have to rub those 2 nickels together at Sizzler Salad Bar. You know, there's Musso's and Frank's, Hamburger Hamlet, the Brown Derby, lots of restaurants in Hollywood. And it just goes up there for the poor me, 1 tear left I go victim card. And it's just complete opposite of how she comes across being this type of a person when in the background, the entire world knows who she is. And, you know, how she disrespected the Queen and treated members of the, royal family. And it's just like, it's so fake. That's why nobody's buying it. And that's why I don't think it's going to do very well at all, allegedly, in my opinion.
Well, I think your opinion is quite good, to say the least. I mean, as I say, I know something about the dynamics of what makes a TV show work. I used to have to watch about 35 hours of TV every single week for my previous job. As I say, I've seen some boring programs, but I'm not kidding you, Tom. I was actually shocked by how dull this was. I thought they could have made some effort, get her out of the kitchen a bit more. I mean, that's the other thing. I mean, even as an amateur cook, she's not particularly good. I just find it strange. I mean, I'll watch an expert chef, Michelin star chef, say, here's how I make a salad, or here's how I cut up some vegetables. But why do I have to watch Meghan, Duchess of Sussex, do this, who clearly doesn't really know what she's doing? She's just another amateur cook in the kitchen. What's the draw? Why am I supposed to care how she cuts up vegetables?
And exactly, Kevin. I mean, you brought up another really good point there. Here's this person who said that she grew up watching cooking shows. I mean, that sounds a little, plagiaristic at this point, if you want to just say that. But yeah. I was under the impression that all those recipes that she was whipping up in the kitchen came from the chef in Chicago that she was dating before Harry.
I bet they did. She saved them up. But as I say, she doesn't come across as an expert. I mean, in episode 1, that cake, the honey layer cake or the honey lemon cake, I mean, that was a disaster, a real mess. But she said she called it the beautiful inside cake. Oh, yeah, great. What do you make, if I can ask you this, Thomas Markle, what did you make of her saying, I'm not called Markle anymore, I'm called Sussex?
I don't think anyone in the world knows that Meghan Markle has eaten Jack in the Box and loves it.
It's so funny, too, that you keep saying Meghan Markle. You know I'm Sussex now. You have kids and you go, no, I share my name with my children.
Yes.
And that feels so, I didn't know how meaningful it would be to me, but it just means so much to go, this is our family name, our little family name.
Well, now I know, and I love it.
Well, you know, see, that's weird because I think she got that, you know, I mean, I think me and Samantha are actually just a tribute to Meghan and her new show because she's going to do that. Samantha and I are both going to change our last names to Sussex legally. Okay, just you know, we have to jump on the bandwagon and support Meghan. So being that I'm technically the Duke-in-law of Sussex, and Samantha's the Duchess-in-law of Sussex, hey, hi Meghan.
Yeah. Did you notice that bit though? So one of her friends says, "Oh, so I can't believe I'm watching Meghan Markle make this," and then she goes, "It's so funny you say that because I'm not Meghan Markle anymore. I'm Meghan Sussex. Sussex is my name." And then she got a load of old waffle about how that's how the family identify themselves. But she's abandoning your name there, Tom. What do you make of that?
Well, I don't have a problem with that. I mean, it's actually probably going to do us a favor because she's drug it through the mud so deep these days that it's just, you know, we can at least redeem ourselves and our dignity now if she does that. But it's always going to leave a stain tarnished, you know, on the name itself. But, you know, it's just like, look it up in Wikipedia, what not to do in life. Get Markled. You know, it's horrible.
Yeah, and you guys have been Markled. Have you spoken to your dad lately? How's he doing?
Dad's doing great. We're actually still vacationing right now and having a great time and seeing a lot and making a lot of videos. And he's actually the happiest he's been in a long time, which is good.
I'm glad to hear that. Has he seen With Love, Meghan yet?
No, I didn't have enough heart medication for him to watch it, so I wanted to make sure I didn't want him to kick the bucket, so I have to go refill the prescription before I let him watch it.
Well, yeah, be careful, be careful. I mean, it was enough of a shock for you and I, so let's be careful with your dad. But what does he make of all of this generally, Tom? You know, this new series, the continued fakery that we've talked about. You know, I'm the most brilliant family woman, not to her own family, she's not. What does Thomas Markle Sr. make of this?
Well, he hasn't said much about it. Dad is pretty firm on the fact that he stands. He always leaves the door open for forgiveness, right? He loves all of his children no matter what. You know, you have some that get it and you have some that don't, but you know, he still loves them all the same. So you know, deep down inside, he still cares about Meghan, of course. Of course he's hurt and that took a hell of a long time for him to get over, but I'm sure he wishes her luck. You know, I mean, it's just, that's what a father does. He's always left that door open for her. And she's always just slammed it in his face repeatedly. So
absolutely. And I've always said that I think that her motivation for what she's done to you, Samantha, and your dad is a kind of snobbery. You know, she wants to be seen as someone who hangs out with royalty and the Hollywood A-list. And you guys are down-to-earth people. And she's ruthlessly cut you out of her life on the altar of that. How does that make you feel?
It just, you know, I'm so used to reading, you know, 50 articles that are paid for. I mean, all her little paid PR puff pieces. I mean, God knows how much charity money goes into that, spending money on all those stories that she puts out. But yeah, it's just, I'm so used to it. It doesn't bother me anymore because, you know, I'm always going to be known like to the entire world, as she claims, the estranged brother, the estranged sister, the estranged father. In all actuality, she's estranged from our family. That's really what it is.
Well, she's divorced you, hasn't she? Not the other way round. Did you? I want to get to a few specific moments in the show in just a second. But when you were kids, when you were growing up, did you notice that she had this ruthless side to her character?
I figured it out one day when I caught her crawling on the ceiling. Then I knew something was wrong. There was always, I have so many videos that I've acquired so many videos that I'm just putting together some really nice pieces. But you can see in a lot of these videos, there was always that little look, which she seems to keep getting caught on camera when she thinks the cameras aren't looking. It's that look, the Meghan Markle death stare, like, you know, where her viper jaw clenches up and she's about to strike. It's crazy. And you notice that in all these videos of her growing up, there's still that little piece there. I mean, I didn't really notice it that much because I was always working and doing my own things and hanging out with my friends. But in those videos, it's pretty shocking, actually.
Yeah, there was a moment when she was in Canada recently where she didn't realise she was being filmed. There was a real death stare moment then. Then she realised she was on camera, and all of a sudden it's like that, you know. Listen, Thomas, you were kind enough to watch this for us and be our critic for the day, our guest critic. Any particular moments that stood out for you that you'd like us to play or anything?
I don't know, about halfway through it, I realized, is there something better I could be doing better right now with my time? And I figured dropping bricks on my pinky toes would probably be better. But it didn't take long to realize that it could easily be adapted into like The Conjuring 3 or Psycho 4 or something like that easily, because it was just that bizarre. It was so straight, bizarre, bland, all the way across, all the way through. And I go, when is this going to change? Is this it? Is this seriously it? I mean, I was dumbfounded. I mean, and then with the wax candles, I mean, what is that? The first thing I thought of was like, is she making like wax dolls, like the Hollywood Wax Museum in the basement? Yeah. What is this? And then the dolls, I'd go, oh God, don't go there.
Yeah.
But
yeah. She lives in a different on a different planet now, because at one point she said, that Daniel guy goes, I can't believe we're making so many candles. Great. And then Meghan says, you can get wax from your local beekeeper. Not around where I live, you can't.
Yeah. If not, I've got 20 tons in the cellar. I could give you some.
Yeah, exactly. Who has a local beekeeper?
Touched beeswax like this before.
Can we just pour it in?
Yeah, let's pour it.
You can get wax from your local beekeeper.
Not that many people around where I live, I don't think.
Oh, a second. The local produce stand where the jam comes from. That's where the beekeepers come from.
Yeah, exactly right. But you agree with me. I mean, I hope the series works, I suppose, but I don't think it will. I just think it's too boring. Television programmes have to be interesting. If they're boring, they tend to fail. So I think you and I both agree this series has got its work cut out, right?
Yeah, here's what's going to happen with everybody. Everybody's going to watch the first one, and it's going to be the worst critically acclaimed episode known to me. And it's probably not. It's not going to make it through there. Then what's going to happen is everybody who watched the first one is going to watch 5 or 6 minutes of the second one, and probably go commit themselves to a psychiatric funny farm. Something like that.
Listen, Thomas, thank you for an excellent review. I've got a new career for you now. You are now talkTV's appointed TV critic. And I wish you and Thomas a lovely holiday and all the best to the rest of your family. Thank you very much for joining us. Now talkTV's appointed TV critic. And I wish you and Thomas a lovely holiday and all the best to the rest of your family. Thank you very much for joining us.
This is what President was trying to explain to Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. He was saying different ways, but how this time will be different from the previous times. And the previous times were in 2014, where we had ceasefire. It did not work for a day. Then in 2022, there were like first attempts of talking, and it didn't work well. So how do we make sure that Russia would not attack us again?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Well, after Thomas Markle's excellent review of With Love, Meghan, on to something completely different, as they say in show business. We're going to talk about the thought police, you know, about these coppers who go around to people's houses and say, well, you haven't committed any crime, but we need to have a word with you about what you've been posting on social media. In other words, cop overreach. You know, we found out last week about this poor woman up in Stockport who posted that a councillor should resign because he was a Labour councillor, because he'd been posting on that WhatsApp group run by Andrew Gwynn, the disgraced former health minister. They've been sort of dissing constituents. She said, this is outrageous, he should resign. A week later, two detectives on her doorstep saying, we need to talk to you about this. She said, have I committed any crime? Oh, no, you haven't committed any crime. It's a non-crime hate incident. So it's cop overreach. Remember Alison Pearson, of course, the Telegraph columnist, a friend and colleague, who was visited by two cops for troubling tweets that she'd posted about a year before to do with some kind of Israeli demonstration in London, and so on and so forth. Julie Bindel, the feminist writer, also had one of these calls. Cops turning up on people's doors to question them about their thinking, their behaviour, what they're posting on social media, whilst stressing to these poor victims of this cop overreach, you haven't committed a crime. Unbelievable. Well, listen to this one. No politics involved in this, but police overreach. Leave us alone. A grandad called Lawrence Meir, 73. He had a row with his neighbour, his little dog Trixie, dachshund by all descriptions, strayed into his next door neighbour's garden, and there was a bit of a row. And in the ensuing sort of dispute, this was in Herefordshire, they both live in, he said, he saw the neighbour the next day and said, oh, good morning, Mrs. I can't really use this word, it begins with T, and the second word's W, and the last word's T, and it's not twit, if you know what I mean. So he said, good morning, Mrs. And also her kids said something about her dog, and he went like this. Stuck his tongue out at the kids. A few days later, the cops turned up at his door, questioning him about this, and he said, well, what are you doing here? And these coppers warned him that if this carried on, he'd be investigated by the police. Well, with me is a couple of the old school. This would not have happened in his day. It's former Met Police detective Mike Neville. Again, what is this about, Mike?
Well, you would hope, wouldn't you, that the police would have better things to do. But the trouble with this as well is that when the police, and we saw this in Manchester with Helen Jones, when the police go around and say, I'm just going to do a routine thing and speak to this lady about what she's putting on Facebook or saying to the neighbour, to the police it might seem routine, but when you're an average member of the public and suddenly two detectives turn up, show their warrant cards and say, you know, you've been saying these things, I'm going to give you a warning. What they've got to realise is the impact they have. The impact they have is they frighten people into not saying things. So they might say, oh, we're just giving you a warning, but the police have got to realise what the consequences are. But the other thing as well, of course, I read in the Laughable yesterday in The Guardian, they were trumpeting the success of the Manchester police because they were solving 11% of burglaries. So you think if the police...
Hang on, it's champagne time.
If the police were solving 99% of burglaries, then they can go and see granddads about saying silly words. They can see ladies about posting things on Facebook saying Labour councillors resign, because they must have loads of time on their hands. But the time they've got should be solving the other 89% of those burglaries and other things. And I'm sure the Hereford police, the West Mercia police, are better things to do than speaking to granddads about silly arguments with their next door neighbour.
Yeah, no, what he did, he stuck his tongue out at this neighbour's kids, and he called her, you know, a slightly nasty name, not exactly the worst word I've ever heard. And he said, look, you know, I admit, you know, I had a silly row with my neighbour and I acted a bit childishly. But two coppers came twice and sat down with him at for an hour. They questioned him for an hour about this. What offence has he committed?
Well, it's nothing. It's not threatening words or anything like that. It's nonsense. It's a neighbourhood dispute. But as I say, it's the chilling effect where police go around there, and the police officers probably did think, oh, we just had a word with him and he's happy. But it's not that. It's far more than that. It's the presence of police officers, and of course other things as well, is that there'll be plenty of people in West Mercia who say, well, my home was broken into, my car was stolen, somebody came in my shop and stole £300 worth of booze or whatever, and the police weren't there. And they read this, and what it does is it tells people, you're right, you shouldn't have trust and confidence in the police. The trust and confidence in the police is at rock bottom, and everything they do like this just pushes it further and further down the hole.
Well, Lawrence Mere, and indeed his neighbour, and his dog, Trixie, they live in the village of Gorsley in Herefordshire. That's 10 minutes from the lovely town of Ross-on-Wye. Latest figures show that Ross-on-Wye has the highest rate for theft and robbery in the entire county, and overall it is ranked as the second most dangerous town for crime in Herefordshire. Mr. Mere said, and I think he's got a point, we might live in a lovely village, but the crime rate around here is going through the roof. That's what the police should be focusing on, not on silly comments that people might say to each other or what they're posting on social media. He's exactly right. I mean, if this was a crime-free area and the police had nothing to do, nothing better to do, I suppose you could go around and say, don't call your neighbour nasty names. But they've got a lot more important things to do. And frankly, I just said that, but no, actually, you're allowed to call your neighbour nasty names if you want to. The police, it seems to be police chiefs, sergeants, whoever, don't seem to understand where the police's power should stop.
Well, we had that, didn't we, with Merseyside, who put up this enormous banner. It's an offence to be offensive.
No, it's not.
That was untrue. And I'm sure the people of that town or village would far rather, for that hour, those officers just patrolled the town centre, made people feel a bit safer, made sure that the shoplifting scallywag didn't do his dirty deeds because he saw some officers were there. Their time could have been more wisely spent. And as you said, there are people everywhere, at every level of this. And if we go to the case of Lindsay Smith, she was the lady in Newcastle
United fan,
who is, she says she's lesbian, and she protested about or made comments about trans behaviour. There's been a Fair Cop had done a review of that, of the way that case was handled, and there's about 8 officers involved, from PC to sergeant to inspector to superintendent, making decisions about, oh, it wasn't a real victim and all this sort of thing. And now they've had to apologise, but it just shows, if you have if your house gets broken into, there'll be one DC dealing with that. These have 8 officers involved in it.
And because of what happened, poor Lindsay, she's a lifelong Newcastle United fanatic. She's, I think, still banned from St James's Park. This is because the police got involved, and all she did was to tweet her views, her gender-critical views. She doesn't believe that biological sex can be changed, and in that respect, she's absolutely scientifically right. And for that, she gets pilloried by the police and banned from her beloved football club. Something is going wrong here. Mike, thank you for coming in. Great to talk to you. Mike Neville there, former police detective in the Met Police there. Now, next up, we're going to talk to Richard Tice about a couple of issues. We need to talk about this BBC documentary, Gaza, How to Survive a War Zone, a blatant bit of disgraceful propaganda that the BBC didn't check out properly. And today, the chairman of the BBC made a quote, admitted to parliamentarians, to MPs, a quote that will knock your socks off. It's quite astonishing. So stay tuned for that.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Let's talk about this documentary that's causing all sorts of ructions. It is, of course, the BBC's alleged documentary called Gaza, How to Survive a War Zone. This was imposed on viewers without the BBC, the state broadcaster, informing them that the star of the show, a 13-year-old narrator, was in fact the son of a senior Hamas official, an egregious omission. It doesn't matter what the BBC is saying, they should have found that out. They didn't tell anyone. And last Friday they admitted serious flaws in their processing here. Today, before the Culture and Sport Committee, Samir Shah, the BBC's chairman, and indeed the Director General Tim Davies, sat before these MPs, and Samir Shah came up with what I considered to be an astonishing quote. We're going to be joined by Richard Tice in just a minute, but let's have a listen to this first.
Let me first of all agree with you that this is a really, really bad moment. What's been revealed goes to the heart, is a dagger to the heart of the BBC's claim to be impartial and to be trustworthy, which is why I and the board are determined to answer the questions you've just asked, because that's what we're trying to do here. Who did know what?
Well, joining me now is the Deputy Leader of Reform UK, MP Richard Tice. Welcome, Richard.
Good evening, Kevin. Well, this is quite a moment, isn't it? We do seem to have someone relatively high up in the BBC, the chairman, it turns out, who has actually admitted that they may have got something possibly wrong. This may well be a first that we should be celebrating, Kevin, because I don't recall it to that.
But the quote, Richard, is extraordinary. It's extraordinary. This is the chairman of the BBC admitted to MPs today that this documentary is a dagger to the heart of the BBC's claims of trustworthiness and impartiality. which is exactly what it is. This documentary, it's not a documentary, it's a piece of propaganda, is an absolute disgrace. It is full of bias reporting. This kid we didn't know was the son of a senior Hamas official, apparently the deputy agriculture minister of Gaza, whatever the hell he does, more likely the deputy tunnel builder if you ask me. But we weren't told about that. Samir Shah went on to say that he believed that people were not doing their job in relation to this oversight, and this shame continues. Now, after this astonishing statement by Samir Shah, the question has to be, what now happens, Richard? Because they cannot just say, well, they've announced some kind of investigation. Of course, it's internal. We need maybe an external investigation, but this is pretty open and shut, it seems to me. I don't like calling for people to lose their jobs, but heads have got to roll over this, haven't they?
Oh, it's unusual for you to be so generous, Kevin. I mean, I've already called for people to be held to account and people to be fired. I actually think that what we've heard from the chairman, and as I understand, he's called for an independent review of the coverage. So whether that's independent outside the BBC or independent within, but the fact that he said that people haven't been doing their jobs, and that statement, I think what we are seeing is possibly the greatest mea culpa from the leadership of the BBC, which must tell us that it's probably a lot worse than we actually realise. And I don't think we yet know, unless I've missed it, whether or not they've admitted the quantity of payments made to people potentially, allegedly involved with Hamas for this programme. But it doesn't really get much more serious than that. And I wonder whether actually they found out that that is the case. And in a sense, I mean, that calls into question more than anybody could possibly imagine. The idea that the BBC, using taxpayers' cash, has basically funneled a bunch of money, our money, to Hamas. I mean, I've got other concerns about UNRWA, which we can come on to later, but it doesn't get much more serious than this.
Yeah, I mean, let's make no bones about it. I always said from the outset that, you know, whether or not Hamas got this money or received money from the BBC is not worth debating. Of course they did. This kid didn't do this for free, and this kid couldn't be in this documentary without the permission of his parents, including his father, who's a senior Hamas official. Money went to that kid's family, went into the pockets of a Hamas official, went into the pockets of Hamas. The state broadcaster has taken BBC licence fee money and essentially given it to an illegal terrorist organisation. It doesn't get more serious than this. Now, yesterday, Richard, we learned, and it gets worse, as they say, that 3 weeks before broadcast, this documentary was watched by the BBC's head of news, chief executive of news, I think she's called. In any other less pompous organisation, she'd probably be called the news editor. But she's got a very serious job. Her name is Deborah Turness. She gets £410,000 a year. Apparently, she watched this documentary, asked no questions at all, and the rest is history. We're told that her assumption was that this documentary had been subjected to BBC compliance rules and had passed. What kind of a head of news watches something like that and walks out and asks no more questions?
Well, Kevin, you've been a journalist for a very long time, and you've always learnt, and I've learnt from other journalists, that you question everything, and you have to stand things up. And if you're the head of news, part of your job, particularly if you're paid that sort of sum of money, which is over double what the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom is paid, you better be very, very good at checking things and making sure things stand up. So, and it's not the first time that said Deborah Turness has been in for criticism. So I suspect that a lot of very senior jobs are absolutely on the line. It would be unforgivable for nobody to be held properly and fully to account. Whether this goes all the way up to the Director General, Tim Davie, I don't know. But it seems to me that the chairman and the board are deeply, deeply embarrassed, humiliated, let down, and I think it feels to me that they've probably had enough.
Yeah, I think that also licence fee payers, as I say, I'm not a caller for people to be sacked, but in this respect, I think licence fee payers deserve results. They deserve something to happen here. They cannot just shrug this one off. Now, this annoyed me. I don't know what you think, Richard, but I suspect it will annoy you too. An independent review into why this film was allowed to air in the first place has already begun. Guess who's conducting this independent review? It is a guy called Peter Johnston, who is the BBC's Director of Editorial Complaints and Reviews. So a BBC man is conducting an independent review. This is not an independent review then. We have had enough of the state broadcaster marking its own homework, right?
Kevin, you actually have to laugh because when we talked just a few minutes ago, I mean, the idea that you could have an independent internal review is a contradiction in terms. I mean, all you can do actually is laugh at the utter stupidity of the suggestion. That indicates that people in the BBC do not get it, even if the chairman and the board do now get it. And there's a crisis of competence, a crisis by the people inside the BBC, and there's a crisis of confidence by millions and millions of British taxpayers. And this, it doesn't get any more serious, this. And actually, Kevin, I've got to disagree with you. I absolutely do think people should be sacked. They should be fired. This is gross incompetence and negligence of the greatest order. It's in deep breach of people's contract. And frankly, they should be gone with zero compensation. If you don't hold people to account, if you don't hold people responsible for gross negligence, then what is the point of it? I can tell you, I've run some big private sector corporations. That level of negligence would result in an instant dismissal for gross negligence.
No, I'm agreeing with you on this one, Richard. I don't usually like calling for people to be sacked, but this is serious. And if the BBC does not realise that this egregious situation calls for a dismissal or several dismissals, then they're not fit for purpose, which is arguable anyway. But seriously, they've got to do something about this, and I would imagine Deborah Turness should be taking a look at her P45 as we speak. She may just be one of the people we'll have to go over this. But just to finish off, the real problem at the heart of this is this review. Why did this pro-Palestine documentary sail through the BBC's vetting process? Because the BBC is constitutionally pro-Palestine and anti-Israel, and it's got to do something about that.
Oh, I think it's worse than that, Kevin, I'm afraid. I think we've seen a degree of bias that is way beyond pro-Palestine. I mean, it is deeply anti-Semitic, and I hesitate, but I fear that actually some people there are basically pro-Hamas in their hatred of the Jewish community, and it's as simple as that. And I know I'll get a whole load of flack for that. Well, frankly, tough. That's what free speech is all about. That's what debate is all about. And it's now incumbent on the BBC to prove that people like me are wrong. And they better do it fast. I tell you, otherwise, there is a serious day of reckoning for the whole of the BBC.
Yeah, I agree. And you talk of, you make the charge of anti-Semitism. My colleague and friend Julia Hartley-Brewer does the same. I think I'm going to go along with that. The BBC has got serious questions to ask about anti-Semitism within its ranks. And I cannot believe it has come to this. So, Richard, stay where you are. And we need to talk about Runcorn, don't we, after the break.
this is what President was trying to explain to Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. He was saying different ways, but how this time will be different from the previous times. And the previous times were in 2014, where we had ceasefire. It did not work for a day. Then in 2022, there were first attempts of talking, and it didn't work well. So how do we make sure that Russia would not attack us again?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. I'm still talking to the Deputy Leader of Reform UK, the excellent Richard Tice. Richard, we had a lovely piece of two-tier justice last week where the thuggish MP for Runcorn and Helsby, Mike Amesbury, who was initially sentenced to 10 weeks behind bars for beating the hell out of his poor victim constituent after a drunken night out. Suddenly he appealed and that sentence behind bars was suspended, but that still means that the constituents, the residents of Runcorn and Helsby, have the right to raise a recall petition triggering a by-election. Now, at the last election, Labour had a majority of about 14,000, 22,358 to Reform's 7,662. We'll just be watching Amesbury beating this poor guy to death almost in the streets. Now, what's going on here? Is a recall petition being organised, presumably by you and the other parties? 10% of the population of that constituency have to sign it. And if there is going to be a by-election, do you fancy your chances?
Well, just before that, Kevin, I mean, the fact that Mr. Amesbury has been suspended, his sentence has been suspended and he's been freed from prison, having beaten the living daylights out of one of his constituents, I think in itself is pretty shocking, very shocking.
Agreed.
And that is an example of two-tier justice, because you think of people who have gone to jail for some daft things that they posted online, but nothing like as egregious. And they've gone to jail for a great deal longer than that.
3 years for hurty words on Facebook. And ridiculous.
And with frankly, as I understand, no right to appeal along the way, or appeals not being allowed, and certainly staying in prison during the process. So that's the first thing. With regard to a recall petition, yes, that is being launched, I understand, by the appropriate process, and I'm quite sure that 10% of constituents will sign up, and that will trigger a by-election. The timing of that will evolve, and yes, of course, we will be battling and fighting that very, very hard indeed, and we battle to win for absolute certainty.
It's going to be very interesting. As I say, you've got a mountain to climb, 14,000 behind, but the world has changed since Mike
Let's call it, it's a hill, not a mountain, Kevin.
A hill, a minor slope to climb. Is Amesbury going to stand as an independent?
Who knows?
Yeah.
I think that could just be embarrassing for him.
Yeah.
Who knows? I would recommend that he doesn't. and frankly, obviously, this is an example where the Conservatives now need to stand aside. They will just be an irritant to everybody in this process. I am quite enjoying actually turning the tables on the Tory party, given what they did to us last year. So that's the position, and if they do that, then yes, I think we can win that constituency, and that will be a great indication of the progress that Reform is making.
Yes, I mean, if you do manage to overturn that majority, that will be deliver to Starmer a serious message on a national basis, I think. I mean, what have you made of Starmer's behaviour in the last few days? Do you feel he has successfully bestrode the world stage to bring peace to Ukraine and to form the bridge between Europe and America? Because I don't.
It's not a very high bar, but actually, I suspect Keir Starmer's probably had his best week since being elected Prime Minister, in all fairness. And he's navigated some difficult terrain. And so let's wait and see how this plays out. Look, at the end of the day, the real point is that everybody wants peace. It's right to try for peace. Whether or not people like the nature of things being played out in the media, look, it was far from Plan A. It was highly regrettable, but the objective is the same. The pressure on all of these leaders is enormous. The pressure on President Zelensky is enormous. Can't imagine the challenges and decisions that he's had to make when his own people are dying every day on the front line. Equally, the pressures on President Trump are very significant. Don't underestimate that. He got elected with a mandate to secure a peace rapidly. That's what he's trying to do. I think he's going to do it. And of course, every peace negotiation involves difficult moments, tense moments, preferably held behind closed doors. That's one of the top tips from the last week. And all sorts of things, all sorts of moving parts in the negotiations. What I keep reminding people is one of the biggest sticks of leverage, the biggest moving parts that people should focus on is the $300 billion of frozen Russian assets in Western central banks. And I think it is vital that Western leaders show some courage and use all of that capital, not just the interest that they've used so far. They need now to use all of the capital. Good people like Seville Browder have been calling this for some time. I've been calling it for some time as well. And it's just got to be done because it's a significant amount of money that can help pay for the security guarantees that are required, as well as many other things, including starting to rebuild Ukraine. So look, there's many things on the table. We must try for peace. It's really difficult. You know, we just know how difficult it is, but we should try.
I couldn't agree with you more, and I can't quite get my head around the demonisation of Trump and Vance. OK, they don't behave in a kind of a European way, but hey-ho, they're Americans, and they are driving for peace, and I think we should try to support them and try and help them rather than fight with them.
And that's the key objective. I actually don't think it helps anybody to sort of to personalise it, to criticise leaders. I just think none of us have any idea just how difficult their jobs are in this sort of very stressful situation. And I think we just got to hope that they can get there, preferably behind closed doors.
Absolutely. Good to talk to you, Richard. Thank you very much for your time. Richard Tice there, the Deputy Leader of Reform UK. We're going back to Meghan Markle after the break. Get your phone calls in, though, about the developments today, what you feel about Zelensky. Looks like he's going to buckle. Was Donald Trump right to strong-arm him? Does Starmer really play a big part in all of this, or is he just trying to show off and pretend he's important? What do you think? 03444991000. Kinsey Schofield next after the break. Stay tuned.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. This is the final hour of tonight's eventful political asylum. And in about 20-25 minutes, it's over to you. I'm going to take all of your calls. I'll read some of your messages. I don't know if you've sent any WhatsApp voice notes in, but if you have, I'll guarantee I'll read all of those out. But I want to hear from you. What do you think? Zelensky looks like he's about to buckle. This mineral deal with America will be signed. That means America will be back on track because they will have skin in the game. They will want to help Ukraine there because they've got all their rare earth minerals worth trillions of dollars in Ukraine. So in a sense, that inherently will defend that benighted country against potential Russian aggression. Good thing was Donald and Vance right to strong-arm the Ukrainian president, who says he regrets what happened. In other words, he hasn't quite gone so far as to apologise, but leading up to that big bust-up that they had in the Oval Office, he was quite combative, and that's the problem. You know, he was demanding various American guarantees, and Vance and Trump just said, no, you haven't got any of the cards. You'll do what we say. Looks like he's going to do what they say now. This is good or bad? What do you think? 0344 499 1000. Let me know what you think about the latest tribunal judge madness, allowing an Iraqi drug dealer, a coke dealer, to stay here. Did 5 years in jail, came out, about to be deported, went to a judge and said, oh, but I'm westernised. I've been here for 24 years. And if I go back to Iraq, I'll be persecuted. Yeah, right, who cares anyway? Judge, yeah, you can stay because you've been westernised. He's Iraqi. Send him back home. Ridiculous. Let me know what you think about that and all these other ludicrous decisions. They keep allowing jailed paedophiles to stay here because they have a right to a family life. It's always a right to a family life under the European Convention of Human Rights. What do you think about this? This madness has got to stop, hasn't it? 0344 499 1000. And I'll tell you something else that I think has to stop. That is the Speaker, Sir Lindsay Hoyle, jetting round the world, spending fortunes of taxpayers' money. He spent 250,000 quid jet-setting around the world, jet-setting around the globe in just 2 years. He spent £3,000 on chauffeur-driven limousines in Los Angeles, 4,500 on chauffeur-driven limousines in Australia. He chartered a private jet when he was in Montserrat in the Caribbean. He stayed at five-star luxury hotels like the St. Regis in Doha, the Westin Grand in the Cayman Islands. And what's he doing in the Cayman Islands? What's he going to find out there? And so on and so forth. He's been spending a fortune. He's the Speaker. What is he doing on these trips, apart from spending a lot of public money? Got to stop, hasn't it? 0344 499 1000. Now, I couldn't let today. I want to talk to you very soon, so get your phone calls in. Got lots of messages, lots of WhatsApps. Now, I couldn't let today pass. Although we've already spoken about this show earlier with Thomas Markle Jr., but I need to get the verdict of the world's greatest royal correspondent, royal guru, and she is, of course, Kinsey Schofield over there on the West Coast. Welcome, Kinsey.
I was just browsing asever.com for all of the products that are still not available. I mean, I applaud her for throwing a picture of them up on the website, but they're still not available to buy. Available spring 2025, it says.
Unbelievable. So this is her website, now called As Ever, formerly known as American Riviera Orchard, which has been going since March last year. So it's been going now officially a year. Still can't buy anything. She's just changed the name. Still can't buy anything. And yet she's putting up price lists, I do believe. But look, we've now watched with Love Meghan, the new Netflix cooking and gardening show. Starts with a lot of beekeeping. There's some candle making. There's some
Not the only bee it starts with.
There's some cake baking, and so cake baking. There's some frittata making. I love the way she gets a pot of yogurt, as you say in America, puts a few raspberries on the top of it, and then says, "There, yogurt parfait." No, it's not.
Chef's kiss.
It's
chef's kiss.
It's not chef's kiss. That's a pot of yogurt with some raspberries on it. She rather grandiosely exaggerates the wonderfulness of her dishes. But anyway, your overview, you've presumably, knowing you've watched the whole series now. Your overview, what do you make of it?
Well, first of all, I'd like to clarify that when I made a bee joke, I meant BS. And after I had a second to process it, I realized it could be interpreted multiple ways.
Yeah, I wasn't sure which bit I was laughing at, but anyway.
Oh, so I guess that would be a great way to start. The show is just full of it. Who in their right mind has the time to orchestrate all of these things? And if they were really unique details, Kev, I'd be all about it. But taking a plastic sandwich bag and filling it full of frosting and cutting off the tip to ice your cake.
And calling it a hack? It's my hack. Yeah, well,
exactly.
Wow, no one ever thought of that.
Yeah, exactly. Like, that's not original content. And I'm going to argue this until the day I die, even though some woman could, laughed at me about it on Good Morning Britain this morning. We are in a different world. Content has evolved. Content has changed. You can watch all of those hacks that Meghan Markle did for 15 to 60 seconds on TikTok today. TikTok, who has the demographic that Netflix is desperately chasing after them. Why stretch out that content to be 45 minutes long when if I really wanted some of these tips and tricks that she calls them, I could just scroll through a hashtag on TikTok at 3 a.m. and get 90 of them versus one in a 40-minute episode. It's backwards. She's not evolving. She is stuck in the ways of her TIG days. And then I also had someone else point this out to me and tell me if you agree. But she said, isn't it a little bizarre that this entire show is a love language to her life before Harry almost? Mm-hmm. You know, talking in the kitchen with, sitting there having a great time in the kitchen with somebody just talking. Well, it reminds you of her ex-boyfriend who she was with right before Prince Harry, the professional chef. How many times did they play out those scenes? And did she manifest something similar when she was with her chef boyfriend? It's not looking forward. There's nothing innovative about it. And that's what bothers me. You said you left the royal family because they were holding you back. From what? Yeah. You just made a show that they would have made in 2012.
So they were holding Meghan back from making ladybird-shaped canapes. Now she can spread her wings and let her talent flourish. Now, my verdict on it, you and I spoke off air earlier, and I said it to Thomas Markle Jr. and he agreed with me. My verdict on the series, I've got some experience of watching television, as you know, former TV critic, used to watch 35 hours a week. I know a little bit about what makes a TV show tick. This show, I was shocked, stunned at how sensationally boring it is. It is so boring. They barely bother to get out of the kitchen. And the entire first, and by the way, of course, not her kitchen, of course. The entire first episode appears to me to revolve around her making food for one of her employees, her makeup man, Daniel. What's that about?
Kevin, she barely leaves the kitchen in episode 1. After 5 years of shoving down our throats, the Procter & Gamble, when I was 11 years old, I wrote Procter & Gamble about a soap commercial and told them that it was sexist that they said women all over the world were in the kitchen because women don't belong in the kitchen. Women don't just belong in the kitchen. Yeah. Meghan has told that story relentlessly for at least a decade, but for the last 5 years since she's actually had this freedom, we've heard it a lot more. Like when she was accepting her Gracie Award, like it never fails. She tells the soap story. And she creates a reality show where she spends almost the entire time in a kitchen. Procter & Gamble is somewhere going, you've been ripping us a new one forever.
Well, while we're on the subject of Procter & Gamble, they were asked about this famous letter that she wrote when she was 11 years old. They've got no record of it. So the jury's out on whether or not it actually happened. But there she is now, as you quite rightly say, the opponent of women working in the kitchen, now working in the kitchen. And some of the recipes, I mean, you know, what did they say about 8-10 minutes pouring candles made out of beeswax? You know, so Daniel goes, I never touched so much beeswax in my life. And I said to myself, well, I can beat you there, Daniel. I've never touched any beeswax in my life. She said, to the audience, she goes, you can get wax from your local beekeeper. Where I live, we don't have local beekeepers. We have gang leaders and people with guns and people with knives. We don't have many beekeepers where I live, and a lot of people who dwell in cities will feel the same. So it was very otherworldly, very stuck in a kind of cosseted, privileged world that I don't think many people will relate to at all.
High maintenance, over the top, unnecessary. And this is the same woman that told us that William, the Prince of Wales, and Catherine, the Princess of Wales, were turned off by her because she just opened the door for them in her blue jeans and her with holes in them in her T-shirt, and she was barefoot, and she wasn't prim and proper enough for them, and she wasn't. She wasn't. How did she phrase it? She just was like cool California, cool, low maintenance, and they were the stuffy ones. And this is a woman that's giving sunflower seeds in her kids to go, like her kids' goodie bags. Like, no, I'm sorry, but she always tries to tell us one thing, but her actions say otherwise. That is one rare consistency because there are few consistencies with Meghan Markle. She's a very inconsistent person, but that's one of the rare ones, that she's always trying to tell us she's something else while presenting something totally different. Actions speak louder than words.
So I had this idea. I said it to Thomas Markle Jr. You know, if she wanted to have a blockbuster show to launch this series, it's pretty damn simple. She invites her dad, Thomas Markle Sr., she invites her brother, Thomas Markle Jr., and her sister, Samantha Markle. She invites them for a rapprochement lunch. She makes the food. There you go, Meghan. That's how you get an audience. Instead, she's making food for her employees.
She's making food for Mindy Kaling, who doesn't even know her last name.
Yeah, but let's talk about that. I mean, you know, Mindy Kaling, you know, quite a amusing presence. You know, she sort of says, I can't believe Meghan Markle's doing the dishes or something like that. And then Meghan goes, it's so funny you should say Meghan Markle. You know, that's not my name, it's Sussex. You know, so what she did in this series, in this show that we've just watched, endured, you might say, she divorced her past. She divorced her name. She effectively said, I don't want to be called Meghan Markle anymore. I want to be called Meghan Sussex. This is the name by which my family identify ourselves. And then she sort of slaps Mindy down, as if Mindy's dropped some sort of appalling howler by using her correct name. It's so funny you should say that, but it's actually Sussex now. A really strange moment. And as the Sun newspaper here in Britain revealed today, well, she loves her Sussex name. In her life, she spent 6 hours, a total of 6 hours in the county of Sussex.
Another great example of the hypocrisy. But, I mean, to your point about inviting Thomas Jr., Sr. and Samantha anywhere near Meghan, the everyone's invited tagline of her show and the Little Miss, I'm so sweet, I get along with everyone, I'm the kindest person on the planet, I'm sorry, but if that was true, you'd have some empathy and compassion for your family, who have clearly not only hurt, and their hearts have hurt, but also those are my dogs saying hi. Their hearts have, but also, you know, her father has been physically very ill over the last few years. And if you really were this soft-hearted person that you're trying to portray on TV, surely to God, you're going to check in with the man that not only gave you life, but gave you the education he gave you and the opportunities he gave you. Because if it weren't for Thomas Markle Sr., Meghan Markle would not have landed Prince Harry.
I said to Thomas Markle Jr. earlier when he reviewed the programme, I said, did you, when she was a kid, did you notice in Meghan this ruthless streak, the way she's ruthlessly cut you out of her life, won't see her poor old dad, even though he's, let's face it, you know, on his last legs. I mean, it seems to be all right now, but he's not well, is he? I mean, he's 80 years old, and we wish him well, but, you know, to cut your dad off when he's that kind of ill is a kind of odd. So I said to Thomas Markle Jr., I said, did you notice? He said, oh, yeah, we knew about Meghan's death stare, that usually before some big old grin, you'd get the death stare. And she's got this horrible look where if she doesn't like something, it's quite frightening. But let's talk about the banality of some of these dishes that she made. I mean, what is the point of a programme where, you know, she throws a bit of pasta into a single bowl, chucks some tomatoes in, a few chopped vegetables and some salt, bit of cheese, boils it up and goes, there you go, pasta.
It's like she's celebrating the fact that America doesn't have home ec classes anymore. Yeah. And she's like, surely nobody's going to know that this is like a page 1 of any sort of basic cooking book or basic how to be a grown-up book. Cook your own pasta. I mean, it was one step above ramen, let's be honest. And ramen is delicious.
Well, and, you know, as I say, then taking a bit of pot of yogurt, and then putting some raspberries on it and calling it yogurt parfait. All of the dishes. And by the way, the cake, the 3-layer honey cake, which she skillfully christened, she named it the beautiful inside cake. She called it that because it was very ugly outside. I mean, that was amateur hour, that cake. So what I'm getting at here, Kinsey, is I can't quite get my head round the concept of a programme hosted by this person who's not a particularly good cook, telling us how to cook.
Host. Not a particularly good cook or host, because again, you and I have had this conversation for years now. Archetypes was all about Meghan Markle. Even though she told you, I have Mariah Carey here with me, I have Paris Hilton with me, I have Serena Williams here with me, Meghan would use their stories to make it all about her. Oh, funny you should say that. For the next 30 minutes, I'm going to talk about myself. That's exactly what this was. You have one of the funniest women in the world, Mindy Kaling, in your kitchen. By the way, I don't know if you've seen her new Netflix series about basketball, but with Kate Hudson.
Yeah. I don't know much about Mindy, but
it's amazing. It is so good, and to me, there's no way that these two are friends in real life. Or Meghan would have had a cameo. Meghan would have had a cameo in this show. It's all about LA. It's all about pop culture. A Kardashian is randomly sitting at a bar, and there's like a quick reference. That could have been Meghan's, you know, cameo in a heartbeat. So I really don't think that these two are very close. But you've got one of the funniest women in the world. Why aren't you asking Mindy Kaling questions about herself? Instead, we've got Mindy Kaling going, tell me fashion. You know, I thought I'd see Meghan Markle, but Meghan Markle. You know, like, honestly, you have really talented people around you. Make it about them. It's called How to Win Friends and Influence People by Zig Ziglar. Pick it up, Meghan Markle. It'll take you 30 minutes to read. You want to make the people around you feel good about themselves and shine. And inevitably, people see that, and it shines on you. The fact that we continuously make it about her, somehow we end up talking about Prince Harry and salt. And Mindy Kaling's like, I love that I know Prince Harry put salt on everything. That's not good TV. I'm sorry.
It isn't good TV, but nor is it good TV to learn that both, she says, my husband and my son love fried eggs. Great. But she puts soda water or something into fried eggs. I mean, you know, I don't really care.
They're fluffier.
Oh, does that make them fluffier, does it? Okay. But these recipes are so banal, so uninteresting. So I don't get the idea of someone not a particularly good cook saying this is how you make one pot pasta. What did she call it? Single skillet pasta or something. I don't get the idea. You know, what's the point of a not very good cook showing us how to make fairly boring dishes? I mean, what's the point?
The point is fulfilling a contractual obligation to Netflix. The point is fulfilling a contractual obligation to Netflix, but like in saying that, we're laughing. But the reality is, like, you just mentioned this very unnecessary and boring pasta dish. Kevin, it took her 5 years to execute this. Mm-hmm. They were talking to Netflix as they were walking. It's been 5 years since Megxit. And Netflix was one of the first people that they talked to. We've been talking about over the last few weeks, they were stuck in their homes in the middle of the plague too, to sit and strategize and to create and to manifest and to come up with some brilliant ideas about how to reintroduce themselves to the world and how to present themselves to the world. And we get a woman talking about cute sandwich shapes for tea parties. Like, you know, this is a woman that wanted us to think she was going to run for president one day, by the way.
Yeah, and by the way, she's never modest when it comes to the use of salts. She went big Epsom salt, big jar for Daniel.
So weird.
And all is it. And then that constant, talking about the fakery here, you know, the constant, this isn't my house. This isn't my house. She kept saying it. And now we're going to go home and put this in Daniel's bedroom. So you're constantly reminded she's not actually in her home. And I love the scene at the end of the first episode where they sat down and there was a hell of a view there, fantastic view there in Santa Barbara. And Daniel goes, "Oh, what is this view?" And then he said, she said, this all feels so fake. And it's like, yeah.
Ding, 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 ding,
yeah,
ding.
Daniel, it really, really does. You think they might have had the wherewithal to cut that phrase out. But, you know, in terms of, let's finish on the practicalities of this. This series was supposed to coincide with, formerly American Riviera Orchard, but now as ever, opening for business. You can buy this pasta. This is this Epsom salts or whatever the hell it is. You can buy it on my website. Oh no, you can't. Nothing is ready, right?
No, nothing's ready. She was clever enough to add images. So again, building more of a hype than we ever had for American Riviera Orchard, which sat stagnant as an email collection landing page. But it says that you have to join her mailing list, another mailing list, and she will email you in spring of 2025 when these products are ready. And there will be people that buy them. Kevin, she does have fans. Yeah. I know because they harass
I know both of them, actually.
Yeah. But so she will sell things, and there's a potential, I might have said this to you before, but I think that there's a potential that she could, you know, maybe rank on one of the lists, like in the same way that she, for 1 week or less, ranked above Joe Rogan on Spotify, but a year later, she didn't have that job anymore. Yeah. And I think that says a lot.
And on the back of this show, if this is the springboard for her business, then I think she's in trouble. I cannot believe for a second that Netflix executives looked at this and said, this has got global hit written all over it. They would have watched it with the same reaction to us. The only reaction you can have, the best you can say is, well, this is all right. But mainly, I think most people would go, this is really dreary. It's really dull.
It's so vanilla. It is so boring. She goes out of her way to not do anything controversial. But she also makes you cringe in the sense that she tries to be quirky by what the problem is you're not saying authenticity.
No.
She talked in that cut interview about the Bachelor producer in her head. That person still lives there rent free.
And last question, you know the beekeeper at the beginning, did he ever get a name check?
I don't think so.
I don't think
no.
it is, just the beekeeper, and as Alex Phillips said to me, he looks just like John Lennon.
Could it be?
Yeah,
Who knows?
wow, you see, now that could be good for ratings.
Tupac's her gardener. Elvis cleans her cars. God knows what's going on in Montecito. She sure is secretive.
But anyway, anybody who hasn't seen this yet, particularly you insomniacs out there, if you're looking for a cure, With Love, Meghan will do the business for you. You'll be asleep within 5 minutes, I guarantee you. Kinsey, it's been a great day, and we'll reconvene on Monday. But thanks so much. Great to talk to you all day. That was Kinsey Schofield reviewing With Love, Meghan, and we had Thomas Markle, her brother, doing that earlier. So rather a royal show. We better go to break now. When we come back, your calls, your messages, we're going to go to the phones. That's the main thing.
This is what President was trying to explain to Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. He was saying different ways, but how this time will be different from the previous times. And the previous times were in 2014, where we had ceasefire. It did not work for a day. Then in 2022, there were like first attempts of talking, and it didn't work well. So how do we make sure that Russia would not attack us again?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Go to the phones in just a second. Here's a WhatsApp text from Tony. He says President Trump could announce tonight that America is leaving NATO. Strong rumours swirling. Well, Elon Musk said this, didn't he? Was it yesterday? That it's time for America to withdraw from the NATO alliance. I suspect, particularly in the light of the fact that Zelensky is folding and buckling, that isn't going to happen. I think it would also be pretty unlikely, but with Trump, you never know. We've got Robbie says the minerals in Ukraine supposed to be worth trillions. Robbie thinks it's an absolute myth and a lie. The same way the Pentagon suggested there were trillions of dollars worth of titanium in Afghanistan, which never materialised either. All people in the media are doing is passing on fake news without fact-checking. Well, you know, there might be loads of titanium in Afghanistan. I know there's a lot of lithium. There's also a lot of lithium in Ukraine as well. And the thing about this deal, it could be worth trillions, but it'll take apparently years to get to it. A lot of mining first, but I think it would be a good thing if America has a part to play in Ukraine's future, because then it will automatically defend Ukraine, won't it? That will stop Putin being aggressive towards Ukraine because America has got skin in the game. And this is from you should do somebody saying here. What we got? Yeah, this is from Jeff. All illegals need to be told that if we have to put troops into Ukraine, they will be conscripted into the army and sent before anyone in work. Also, those of our own not working will be second to go. You can't force people to do this unless you get conscription. And I reject the notion of foreigners being conscripted into our army. I mean, are you really going to get loyal service from a bunch of illegal migrants? They'll just cut and quit, won't they? I don't see that will work. But, you know, interesting thought. Thank you, Jeff. Johnny, he's talking about Meghan. Meghan now saying she's called Sussex. Johnny says, evening, Kev. Meghan's married surname is not Sussex. It's Mountbatten Windsor. She doesn't even know her own name. That's quite a good point. This is about Runcorn, where Mike Amesbury is still the MP. The thug who beat up one of his constituents got a suspended sentence after appeal. And there's going to be a by-election there, as we just heard from Richard Tice, the Deputy Leader of Reform UK. Dale says, Dale's in Warrington, I'm from Runcorn, and definitely I'm going to vote Reform. There is no room for thuggery in our politics. But yeah, I mean, a lot of people might be put up by Mike Amesbury's thuggery. He was a Labour MP. He's certainly been suspended from the Labour Party, if not kicked out now. He certainly will not stand for the Labour Party there in Runcorn. For Labour, he may stand as an independent. But his thuggery is not the only reason people won't vote for Labour and won't vote for him. It's because people are fed up with Labour, and there's a direction of travel, and that travel is heading in the direction of Reform UK. This is from Lorraine, talking about Tim Davie, the Director General, and Samir Shah, the Chairman of the BBC, appearing before the Culture and Sport Committee in Parliament today. This is Lorraine. She said, the smirk on Tim Davis's face during today's MP panel highlighted his complete lack of integrity and sincerity. He did not look like a man with any remorse. If he had any moral compass, then he would have ensured that the independent review was actually independent. I agree with you. I mean, I'm not accusing Tim Davie of not having a moral compass, but he's presided over a disastrous decline of the state broadcaster, particularly in terms of its journalism. The reputation of BBC journalism, thanks to its disgraceful, biased, prejudiced, anti-Israel coverage of the Gaza conflict, is in the toilet. Their reputation has gone. It's incredible. Deborah Turnus, the head of news in just 3 years, has presided over this disastrous decline in reputation. I cannot believe that we've come to this point. And here's one from Phil about Meghan. All the negativity around Meghan. One thing you missed, I think, it isn't good for us to be able to and she's trying her best at a new venture. I'm no royal at all, no royal fan, I think. Just a thought outside the box. She's trying her best in a new venture. She's trying to make money out of her royal title. There's another one from Justin. Harry and Meghan's surname is not Sussex, it's Mountbatten Windsor. Confirmation of that. Sussex is a title, and one they no longer deserve. I agree with you there. And finally, Martin in Aberdeenshire. Here is the next Meghan series plot. Meghan sets up an abattoir and then gets filmed killing Bambi, gutting Bambi, and then serving a nice bit of rump Bambi up to the ginger whinger with blood drying on her cheeks and forearms, smiling at Ginger. She licks some blood off her lips. Well, Martin, I think it's probably a long shot. I don't think she'll do that. That wouldn't be very good for her image, would it? Right, I'll tell you what we'll do. Yeah, let's take a quick call. Let's talk to Georgina in London. Hello, Georgina.
Good evening, Kevin. Well, I hate to have to be harsh on one of my own sex, but I would rather be dragged bare-bottom down the M6 over broken glass than be subjected to a single episode of the new Meghan Markle, or should I say Sussex, or maybe Mountbatten Windsor. I don't even think she knows the name. You know, considering they retired from public life to pursue their privacy, they're chasing celebrity at every opportunity. I mean, the California fires is a prime example. Honestly, this woman would go to the opening of an envelope. Nothing she could show at all in this programme could even come close to resembling a mum in a normal household. Believe me, I am one, so I know. Whether the toys, unwashed dishes, or the doggy poop in the garden, I've got 3 little softies, so I know.
Yeah,
you know,
a lot of people are saying this, Georgina.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing, right? So you got friends. Say you got a friend coming to stay. Did you see? Oh, well, you haven't watched it. She spends about an hour or something, like making a big jar of Epsom salts for the bath plants and God knows what, and popcorn. Takes her about an hour to prepare all this stuff that she's going to put in her guest bedroom. Now, the rest of us, we haven't got time to do that because we have this thing called a life.
Absolutely. Well, my guess, if they come to me, I mean, I've got my best friend staying with me at the moment, and she's lucky if she gets a Rustler burger and a pot noodle. Well, seriously, I just haven't got the time. You know, who is this program? Where's the market for it?
I don't know. I don't know, Georgina. It's a mystery. I know you don't want to watch it, but I'm going to try to get you to watch. Try and watch about 20 minutes of it. I'd love to hear what you think. Give me a ring tomorrow. I keep saying this, and I'm not just saying this. I was just shocked by quite how spectacularly boring it was. Have a look at it and give me a call tomorrow. You won't want to do more than 20 minutes. I wouldn't impose that on you, but I'd love to get your verdict. So do that and call me tomorrow. Is that a deal?
That is a deal.
Okay.
I will do that.
You will be my critic for tomorrow. We'll talk then. Thank you, Georgina. Georgina in London. Let's go to break. More messages, more phone calls, more WhatsApp voice notes after we come back.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Sally, our friend from the Outer Hebrides, has sent a message in loving the show. I think Big Don and JD are both dusting off their hands and congratulating themselves on a job well done. I think you're right, Sally. I think they've got the result they wanted. So that spat has led to what looks like a complete capitulation by Zelensky. He's going to sign this mineral deal and then he will be forced into some kind of peace deal involving Putin. Nobody's going to get everything they want, but if we get peace out of this, what is so bad about that? I like this one from Gaz. He said, yeah, it would have been great. This is about the Meghan show. It would have been great halfway through Meghan hearing Harry banging on the bog floor upstairs, shouting, "Where's the bog roll, love?" Like in a real home. Let's play, before we go to the phones, we've got a few calls to receive, but first up, here's some WhatsApp messages. Here's a couple on Donald Trump, and this is the first one, and it's from Rob.
Hi, Kev. Great show as usual, except the part when you said about Trump getting exactly what he wants. I think it is Putin that's still getting exactly what he wants, not Trump. So you can cancel that one out. Trump does not care one jot about the UK, Europe, or even the American people. He's fighting them left, right and centre. The only audience he wants is with powerful men and billionaires. That is all. Sorry about that. Now, I'm a bit right-wing myself, but I just cannot stand the man.
Well, Rob, we don't always have... I usually agree with most of your WhatsApps. I don't agree with that one. No one's going to get everything they want, and Putin won't get everything he wants. But if we can get a peace deal out of this, I just think it's a good thing. Hundreds of thousands of young men dying. If you could stop that, that's a great idea, isn't it? Here's another WhatsApp voice note. This one's from Steve, and it's on Donald Trump again.
Isn't it funny, Zelensky's falling in line with what Trump wanted? It's amazing what happens when you threaten to take away someone's pocket money, isn't it?
Well, whatever he threatened to take away, it has worked. And you just sort of knew it. Obviously, Zelensky's been spoken to by Starmer, maybe Macron, half the leaders saying, you're just going to have to do what the Americans want. We need to follow their lead. It's as simple as that. Finally, another one on Trump. This is Dave.
Good evening, Kev. Reference to Trump Ukrainian deal. Trump said Zelensky, it's all about compromise. What compromises has Putin given up, or what likely is he going to give up?
Well, we don't know yet, Dave. That's a good question, though. That was what remains to be seen. The peace deal will have to be acceptable to Russia, have to be acceptable, of course, to Ukraine and America. So we shouldn't preempt that. We should wait and see what's in it. But fascinating times, fascinating times. Let's go back to the phones. Let's talk to Peter in Croydon. Hello, Peter.
Hello, Kevin. Yeah, I wanted to talk about Trump, but can I talk about the Gaza documentary?
Yeah, by all means, go ahead.
I watched the clip on the little clip you showed about the chairman.
Yeah.
And I thought I'll go back and watch the whole thing. So it was a segment of a bigger picture. So anyway, I thought I listened to what the chairman was saying, and I thought he was a bit slippery. Sort of he was basically waffling.
Well, I mean, he said that was a dagger to the heart of the BBC's contention that it's trustworthy and impartial. That's a hell of a quote.
Absolutely, but
that's not really waffly, is it?
No, that's not waffle, Kevin. Yeah. But the whole context of it, the other bits he was talking about was just a lot of waffle. I mean, that was hard-hitting, honestly. But the whole thing...
Well, what do you mean by waffle? I mean, they're pledging to try to get to the bottom of it. We don't know what the outset is going to be. But if you're going to... Once he said that, I think it's a bit slightly unfair to accuse Mr. Shah of waffle. That is a hell of a mea culpa, a hell of a statement, an absolutely damning statement, essentially saying the BBC can no longer pretend to be impartial.
I know, Kevin, that was hard-hitting, but the rest of it was just like a bit of a show. You know, we've got to say something. But and Tim Davey, I mean...
Tim Davey.
Hey?
Tim Davey. Yeah, go on anyway. Jim Davey, yeah.
There was this Asian MP. She asked him something. I can't remember what it was.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden she said, well, what are you sniggering for? And
yeah, well, a lot of people have observed that. I must admit, I'm going to be honest with you, I didn't watch it at great length. I just saw... But apparently Tim Davey was all smirky and smiling, which is inappropriate. Inappropriate.
It is. Absolutely. Yeah. He humiliated her, you know.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, Peter, the reason that you've made a good point, but we have to wait and see. I mean, as I say, the BBC, that's as much of an apology and a mea culpa as I've ever seen the state broadcaster make. The question is what happens next? They've got this inquiry, which they say is independent, and yet it's being run by a member of the BBC staff, so it's not very independent. But I do think heads are going to have to roll. People have to get fired over this. Otherwise, trust in our state broadcaster will be finished. Peter, good point. Thank you for the call, and call me again. That's Peter in Croydon. Shall we go to... Let's go to break.
Imagine being married to her. Oh, hi, Megan. What have you got for breakfast? Oh, I've made a rainbow from some fruit and some yogurt and some
Just give me a box of Lucky Charms, Mike.
Right. How about a bacon sandwich? Any chance of that? You know? What's going on? I mean, any working woman would take about 4 hours to do that. They haven't got time.
No, exactly. I'm grabbing my protein shake that's been sitting in the back of my car for 3 months. The taste is off, and I've got work to do.
Right.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Here's the final broadcastable WhatsApp voice note. We get a lot. Lots of them very funny. We enjoy them, but many of them are not particularly appropriate for a family show. But this one is. I always love Claire's WhatsApp voice notes. She sent one in on our jet-setting speaker, Mr. Speaker of the House, Lindsay Hoyle. Take it away, Claire.
Evening, Kevin. Lindsay Hoyle, I refrain from calling him sir, is another of the lefty elite who like spending our taxes on themselves. If he had been sacked as Speaker of the House after his collusion with Starmer over the SNP debacle over Gaza months ago, it would have saved us a bit of money, but not enough. He, as you say, Kevin, is totally biased as far as the Labour Party is concerned, and this shows more so with the derision and allowing the barracking of the Reform MPs at parliamentary questions.
Yeah, I mean, Lindsay Hoyle, I detect that he's a little bit favourable towards his Labour buddies, but people might disagree with me there. But I think what the charge here is you're spending £250,000 worth of taxpayers' money swanning around the world, staying in £900 a night hotels, spending thousands and thousands of pounds on chauffeur-driven limousines, actually even at one point chartering a private jet in the Caribbean, flying first class, business class, everywhere. This is outrageous. It's got to stop. He's got fact-finding missions. This is what we're not going to put up with anymore. You take our tax pound and you spend it like this. It's not your money. We've had enough of this. You treat us with respect. It's got to stop this. That's my view. Let's go back to the phones. Petri Hoskin will be in a little while to tell you what she's got lined up for your entertainment from 10 p.m. until 1 a.m. But in the meantime, let's talk to Chris in Cambridgeshire. Hello, Chris.
Hi, Kev. Right, Mr. Starmer, Mr. Poke Your Nose in Starmer.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's got a great deal to answer for with all the problems between Zelensky and Trump. If you look at it, he went out to Trump, had a meeting with him, and the first thing he did when he came back was rush out to Zelensky, tell him how he'll support him, comes home, gives the boots on the ground and the planes in the air support.
Yeah, 2.2 billion quid of our money was given to Zelensky.
Keep fighting, Mr. Zelensky. We're all behind you.
Yeah.
No wonder he went to Trump ready to start demanding.
But I think what subsequent to that, Trump, or rather Starmer, has been saying something in public and something different, I suspect, in private.
Absolutely.
So he's been saying, this war must continue. We must continue to support Ukraine. We must get Americans' support as well. I think quietly, behind the scenes, he's been saying to Zelensky, say sorry and do a minerals deal.
Probably. But the problem is...
Well, he's doing it now. He's doing this deal.
Oh, he is now, because I think immediately Trump cut off the money.
Yeah.
He realised he didn't have an option.
Yeah. I don't think Starmer played much part in this at all. Starmer is trying to project an image to us that he's bestriding the world stage. Britain. Yeah, well, he can try it, but I don't think either Donald Trump or J.D. Vance give a damn what he thinks.
No, but he's been a fly in the ointment to him by doing all these things like the boots on the ground and the planes in the air speech.
Yeah, kind of, but
it doesn't help.
Yeah, but
he's also wound up Europe to all sort of line up behind him, and it's made him feel very important.
Yeah, but where we're heading very quickly, it seems to me, is some kind of peace deal. Trump is forcing this through the sheer power of his will, and it looks to me as if it's going to happen.
I'll tell you what, I'm looking forward to all that bright yellow face he'll have at the end of it, with all the egg on it.
Yeah, exactly right. I'll look forward to that. Chris, great call. Thank you very much. Always good to talk to you. Chris in Cambridgeshire there. Let's go to John up there in Scotland, in West Lothian. Hello, John.
Good evening, Kevin. What I would just like to say is that our wonderful Prime Minister, who is trying to deflect everything that's happening in the UK to his wonderful on world stage. But the one concern that I really have, and I would have thought a lot of people would have, is he's talking about all these boots on the ground.
Yeah.
Now, all right, there may be a peace treaty or whatever. We send our troops out there. Are they there as British troops? Are they there as NATO troops? Are they there as European troops? And suppose we get a rogue Russian general, whatever, and our troops get killed. What do we do then? Where do we stand?
Well, I mean, don't forget, you know, our role in Afghanistan was peacekeeping. And yet, for years, that was like all-out war. Our people were dying in their droves, under a constant attack, fighting bullet battles. So that was called peacekeeping. So you're right to question what peacekeeping in Ukraine will look like. It could potentially look like all-out war.
Yeah, that's the point, Kevin. It's not like we're taking on the Taliban. What would be here would be a conflict with Russia, which is a far more serious situation than taking on the Taliban. So what do we do then? Does the Americans come in and protect, join in? Yeah. Where does it go from there? You know, I mean, Donald Trump was the one that said, you know, you're risking World War III. But what are we doing?
Yeah, but I think you know, the fact that clearly Zelensky is about to sign this minerals deal will mean that America will continue to be at the centre of the fray and will effectively defend Ukraine because it's got skin in the game. So that's going to be interesting. But as British boots on the ground, what boots? We haven't got any army left. He's just talking out of his backside, to be honest with you. John, good call. I've got to move on, though, but thank you for a good call. Call me again. John in West Lothian, and I've got to get to this call. This is Lowry, who feels very sorry for Harry. Lowry, why do you feel sorry for Harry?
I think that when his parents well, it's not his parents, his father back home here, sees the SH-1T that is being put out from Harry's wife. Mm-hmm. Harry must be mortified.
Well, he's actually in. Have you seen this new series with Love, Meghan?
I've seen some of it, yeah.
I mean, don't you think he's part and parcel of it? Or he seems to absolutely worship Meghan and admire everything she does. So I don't think he's mortified by this. I think he's probably rather proud.
Does he still worship her?
Well, yes, he does at the moment. No one knows why, but he definitely does. There's no doubt about that.
There's so much going on in the royal family at the moment. I just wonder whether very soon Harry will come home with his tail between his legs. And
yeah, well, Lowry, that could be in the future. I agree with you. I mean, the big question is how long does this marriage last? I mean, I would say it's pretty strong at the moment, but you know, I'm sceptical that it will last the course. Are you?
No, I